but at the same time, not treating me like an adult while doing so. I mean, you're talking about things you wouldn't talk to with a teenager, but whatever. Whatever.
That's it?
You can't just say stuff like that and then
I don't
be
know.
like, no.
No, I don't know. I can't explain my things because I'm stupid. Okay. Okay.
What is the objective, Colonel?
You know the Covenant carrier that slipped away from the city? We need to secure its old LZ. Snatch a Tier 1 asset.
You know what? Pretend like you never spoke to me. Pretend like you know nothing about me next time. That would be great. Still, okay, I'm just gonna put.
Where's the Colonel?
Down near the Covenant LZ.
Okay, I will take this conversation more seriously and I won't joke around. Okay.
You can joke around. You think I haven't been joking around this whole time? I literally said
Yes. Yes, I have understood that you're joking around. I've just been not taking this conversation seriously. See?
Okay, so one thing adults do, one thing about adults.
Once we clear this enemy armor, we can roll across the bridge to its location.
I don't give a fuck what you say.
I am self-conscious about what I say because I'm always worried I'm gonna say something stupid. That's why I'm not as stupid as you think I am in real life.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You should just not be so self-conscious.
Charged and ready.
Whatever. I say stupid. I said stupid shit this whole conversation.
When I stop giving a shit about what I say, I sound extremely stupid because I talk very quickly. It's like I am a New Yorker on crack, or here, wait, that's just normal New Yorker.
That's what I'm saying, is that adults tend not to care about
Swapping mags.
Right. Which is why you don't give a shit and go yell at people with an AR-15 in California. Man.
if the cops come and I tell them, hey, listen, these fucking kids screaming outside my house.
Roll
Be
over,
outside
Mike
at 2 a.m.
Foxtrot. Get yourself foxtrotted. Headshot. What are you scared?
Then we'll have a conversation.
Low on ammo.
Solved. Yeah, but you don't. This doesn't have to be complicated. This isn't rocket science.
Rockets up.
Just don't be so self-conscious.
This stream has gone on for 115 minutes, according to YouTube.
So self-conscious, man.
You just ended the stream, so... Oh, it's gone on for 2 hours.
Why restart it?
It's gone on for too long. Oh god, I've been procrastinating this entire time, but thankfully that thing only takes 15 minutes.
Okay, let's start taking some Covenant names.
How do we know what that means?
You didn't hear me?
I heard you just don't know what that means.
No, I just have something I can do in like 10 minutes, so I don't care. I don't know why. I just hate that thing.
I mean, that's another thing. That's like some people procrastinate instead of getting their shit done.
Trooper, drive towards the space elevator.
Yes.
Take it to the bridge.
I know. I think my procrastination is chronic.
Procrastination is a choice.
Yes. What?
Move your ass, Trooper. Get across the bridge now.
Anyways. Oh god. Anyways, Delta Words. Do you have anything interesting to talk about? Oh no, I'm just bored. I'm not gonna do that stuff, so don't ask.
Schoolwork, I'm assuming.
Math.
Oh dang, it was.
Yes.
Look, the elevator!
Yes.
Incoming!
Thank God. Whoever decided adding letters to math, I want to shoot that person.
Subspace rupture!
Arab.
Must have weakened.
It was algebra.
It was an Arab, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
Yeah, he's
I
right.
know.
It was
I know.
algebra.
Somebody already got him
What's his
before
name?
me. I know. We invented algebra, and well, we didn't invent numbers, modern numerals and shit like that. It was the Indians, but who cares? We stole it. I'm proud.
I'm
You're-
proud. Dang, that could never come out of my mouth. I would be canceled immediately.
I am proud to be partly Romanian. Just that one little bit. Delta Wards. I think we killed him. Well, I did, not you. You were trying to revive him.
I don't
For
feel
my
confident
retarded-
having the most frickin' bachelor meal of all time. Microwave burritos.
Damn, bro. Dang.
I'm fucking sick. I don't feel like cooking.
Living the high life.
Support rings! Oh, units.
I don't get why people microwave burritos just sound really awful to me. Like the cheese gets weirdly soggy and shit like that.
Sir! Damn, he's gone.
And the meat is even more shit than real life.
Hell, he's gotta find a way out of this farm.
Listen, I spent years eating.
Okay, I'm sorry, they forced you to eat crayon paste, but is it really that bad? Some of them are bad.
I mean, they're not that bad, but the point I'm trying to make is after you eat them for years.
If you're sensitive about food, the Marines is probably not the service for you.
My roommate was an
Air Force is where it's at.
Yeah, my roommate was an Air Force Giants, went over to MREs. I let him have one. He's like, what the fuck? Like, you guys ate this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, no wonder why like all the Marines I went to Afghanistan with were like murderous, like fiends. They wanted. He was like, the Marines. Every time they go off base, they were like, the Marines would always like kill somebody. Which I guess is what they are supposed to do.
Bro, the Air Force has it right when they just build a little city wherever they go.
My roommate, when he was in Afghanistan, he talked about how
They build a
had,
city-
Like, he had like a dorm,
My brother got a dorm room.
They also get air conditioning. You know what? I'm done with this bullcrap. I'm gonna do something bad. I'm gonna use Google to answer my math homework. Brilliant. No, there's this new thing on Google Photos for homework.
Yeah, that's like old. There's been
It's been there for years. Well, oh yeah, the wolf calculator. Oh, thank God for them. You're talking about wolf calculator, right?
It's unironically how it happens.
No! You're not listening! It's a zoo! Okay?
Well, technically, it's a corporate-funded wildlife reserve.
Semantics! This
I really need to apply myself.
is
Good lord.
one big
I took a college algebra class and I wanted to yeet myself off a cliff.
except we.
So I have like not done any math or difficult subjects since then.
And the Covenant? They're the lions!
And I was not a dipshit in high school, but I did not really apply myself.
You know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna grab some food. You guys gonna complain about me or some shit. How retarded this kid is. Well, yeah, you guys are not gonna do that. You're adults, but some college students would, and not college students, high school students would. that I definitely know. That's why I'm not friends with them anymore. Fucking retarded.
Oh, that guy's dead. F in the chat, Buccaneer.
Enjoy that extra nose hole.
Got a question. Do you prefer cold or hot showers?
Hot showers, motherfucker. Even in blazing hot summer, hot showers.
Yes. Actually warm, but yeah.
Wasn't super hot.
Reloading.
Do you like to end it off with a little bit of coldness? Okay. Morning or night time?
I take a shower in the morning. Because I'm really dirty.
Oh, okay. You work at a pot shop. No, you don't. You don't. You hate them. How? Wait. How? Oh, why? Okay, I didn't know smackheads. I didn't know smackheads earned tons of money.
No, there's just a gajillion.
Just the selling to smackheads, not actual smackheads. They lose tons of money.
Yeah, smack it. They have on the
They'd sell their.
Drive right through it.
United States. They don't earn anything off
What's the name? Smackheads would sell their left nut before saving their mother for what's the name? Getting pot or coke or whatever they do.
I didn't train to be a pilot. Tell me I don't have any more flying to do today. So, was that a yes or a no?
Aircraft maintenance technicians, 1941.
Not even the Master Chief. This
What?
is cool.
Amen.
Freaking, Dutches.
Aircraft maintenance technicians in 1941.
What?
I said AMT in 1941. Aircraft maintenance technicians in 1941.
I don't understand what you're talking about. Nor do I really care, to be honest, so...
The people who fixed planes in 1941, they technically were qualified, partly. They knew some of the stuff about the planes, so they were sometimes conscripted to learn how to fly.
Yeah,
Yes.
because we needed people to fly.
I wonder why. It might have been this guy's former profile picture. Woodman.
Why is your
I
name
don't know,
Winning?
could've-
Why don't you have a cool name, like or my name?
Delta Wards is Delta. How do you say it?
I don't know.
I'm not. When eggs drop is when eggs. It's
Why
like,
did you choose that?
I don't know why. I don't know. Twitch gave it to me. It actually sounded somewhat decent enough.
Jeff Bezos gave you that name?
Yes, yes, Bezos did.
He did.
Oh, what's the
He
name?
named you. He's like, my son when eggs drop.
I would not want to be his son. You think I would want to be the son of a bald man
Yeah.
What's wrong with
who doesn't allow people to piss?
maybe if they're employees? I worked at UPS for years.
Works great.
Fuck warehouse
Right.
employees, they can go fuck
Get done
themselves.
fooling around.
I could get rid of the bathrooms at UPS.
Did I do something wrong? Because the only thing I regret about you and me,
They can piss in
not
the
knowing
bottle
you
when
were a
they drink
spook
out
when we
of it.
first
They
met.
can go fuck themselves.
I would have been a lot less charming.
That sounds partly true, partly fake, because you have to send back packages and then get ones and they're always delayed or some shit.
Yeah. It was not hard working at UPS, but warehouse employees are apparently just too dumb to figure it out. Hey, it's Covert. How you doing?
Oh god! Hey, you
Whoa!
left.
I wanted to say hello to a celebrity.
You haven't said hi to Covert?
I've never been in this voice chat. No.
How's it going, Covert?
Hello? What is this
He
man?
muted
He's
himself.
was just messed up.
I think his mic is broken.
Yes, he muted himself.
How will he make the content?
Probably
I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
he doesn't use this.
Like, I genuinely wonder if he spends time on his server.
But I didn't know what his recent video was about.
It was about,
It's about cyber warfare.
Oh.
and that was my MOS was Palm, but cyberware.
I want Covert Cabal to talk about rebels and insurgents.
Bro, you're a little friggin' radio man, aren't you? Yeah.
No, I was an 0621. Was my MOS. But I did a lot of cyber stuff too. Like we had this server stack that you could connect to a radio and basically create Wi-Fi with the radio. We downloaded
I mean,
four
I mean,
it was really cool.
Wi-Fi is just radio.
Well, I know it is. Well, it's the radio we had was it was lower frequency than Wi-Fi, so it wasn't Wi-Fi technically. But we downloaded one time.
over here!
That's
Tell me
pretty
how
much-
long.
What?
Technically, allegedly. It did not happen.
I don't think it's classified, but I'm not gonna say.
Uh,
It's one of the just look up any of the USMC
Saw your pod
radio
hit.
systems. You can figure out
You're
which
one
it
lucky
is.
SOB.
See any more come down?
I'm too dumb to do so.
The more I think, the more I've learned about radio, all this stuff that we take for granted, it just
Think it's
blows my
magic.
mind. When you know just like the basics of radio and how everything's like cellular, Wi-Fi, radar, all that stuff's basically just a radio, a special radio.
So one of our radios actually uses 2G, a 2G network, and we created something called Tech Chat. You could like use radios to text each other. It's really fun. I once texted dick pic to one of my buddies.
Cover me! Reloading!
My dick pic. That's how chat it was.
The what's it called? The amateur space has stuff like that.
Astrology. Wait, no.
What? Wait, why are you talking about
I
astrology?
said astrology by mistake. I said it by mistake. Please save me from white girls on Twitter.
What? What are we talking about there?
You said something about amateur space observation, and I said astrology by mistake.
Amateur radio. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about space observation. I am convinced Twitter was just made to contain idiots on the internet.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Make them feel
Bow down to hashtag. I genuinely can't understand why companies would bow down to a crowd if they're only gonna get hashtagged for like a few days.
Because
Holy
companies
shit.
like money. And when they think they're gonna lose money,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's worse? Having to spend tens of millions of dollars or just people being angry at you for a day? Depends on the size of your company and what's being done, but really, what's important?
does the money number go up?
Well,
Does the money number go up?
well, the thing is, companies they don't look at profitability. That's kind of impossible to do.
Yes, yes it is. Yes, but if you're gonna spend tens of millions to change something, to make a crowd happy, is it really important?
How can they tell what will and what works? That's the problem.
Yes. That's why I'd be the best business manager of, what's that, what's that company that failed in 2008? Forgot their name. Why did I forget their name? The brothers, something brothers.
Lehman Brothers?
Yes, the Lehman Brothers. I'd be great on that team. They actually crashed due to insurance. It was due to insurance.
That's part of it. They fell because people lost confidence that they could
Yes.
keep their freaking assets.
Yep. Insurance and assets.
That's the reason why they had the insurance, and then they had to go use. I think they used the insurance and that freaked people out even more.
All because they bundled home loans that should not have been given.
I wonder what would have happened if Standard Oil crashed into oblivion instead of dismantled. In like 2008 or some shit. How would it have gone?
The thing with the whole
I know.
CDO
It was housing.
that was created by the government basically. That the CDOs were created by the government, and the companies were like, okay, we'll just fucking roll with it, I guess.
But what's Rockefeller? Was it Rockefeller? I think it was. He still got to own those companies.
Well, yeah.
It's competition.
Well, that was
The best type.
That was the deal to make sure that he didn't like throw a hissy fit.
He would probably argue. He did argue it was unconstitutional or some shit. But does that matter?
Constitutional.
Does anybody care? No, they don't. You do?
What? Wait, what
You
is he
like
being spoken
Standard
about?
Oil running around.
I zoned out.
We're talking about the breakup of Standard Oil.
Oh.
We went through five topics in 2 minutes.
Gonna be honest, I'm a big shill for Teddy Roosevelt. So anytime he
Teddy
can bring his big
Roosevelt
stick,
is the worst. Is like one of the worst
talking
presidents
stick.
we've had.
Ooh.
Teddy Roosevelt, he was before Wilson. I would argue the people who ruined America the most were
Give me a moment.
Gotta get
Andrew
through
Jackson,
this door.
Teddy
Be
Roosevelt,
a
and
switch
Wilson.
around here somewhere.
I hate Wilson. I will agree. I despise Wilson.
Well, if you hate Wilson, then you should hate Roosevelt, because Wilson was just Roosevelt on steroids.
That's the problem.
Trooper, we're pinned down. Cut through this building. Hit him from behind.
Buck, location.
Almost there. What's wrong?
Multiple hostiles closing on my position. Listen carefully. If I don't make it...
Will, hang on. I'll be right there.
Too late, they spotted me.
Damn it, no! Veronica, talk to me. Don't move. I'm coming. You hear?
Commander said, please.
I don't like Teddy Roosevelt.
Don't like Panama Builder?
Yeah, and I think Tucker Carlson's a retard. He's like Teddy Roosevelt was the best president we ever had. He did all this shit. Like, no, he's the reason why our government. Well, he's not the reason, but he's one of the reasons why our government's really shitty. It does the shitty shit that it does.
You know what I find weird? That I know that the Constitution, Declaration of Independence has no importance really for them right now, but the Constitution.
Wait, the Constitution doesn't have an importance?
No, I think
No,
he
no,
means
the Declaration of Independence doesn't really have importance. I was talking.
It's not law, even though I would argue it is.
Yes.
It kind of puts down the ideas that the country is kind of supposed to upheld or at least respect.
Okay. So here's my problem with the Constitution. We've had 300 years, but we haven't updated the Constitution that much.
No, we have. No, we have.
Well, and that's the,
My least favorite thing is when people say that.
No. I'm not saying we haven't updated it at all. I said not much.
Well, okay, but here's the thing. It was kind of designed. It was designed to be, because the point of it is that the Constitution is.
It's really vague.
Well, no, hold on. The Constitution is the law of the land. It's like basically what we are founded on, and if you really fuck with what we're founded on by changing it immensely every couple of years, you really can screw a lot of shit up and at time cause lots of problems. Which is why it's really
No, I'm not.
Which is why we shouldn't change it. It's a
personally
good
think.
bug, not a feature. Or it's a feature, not a bug, that we don't change it. And we have, what it is, we have changed it quite a bit.
I hate when people say that. Oh, well, you've never changed your constitution. No, there's 27 amendments.
No.
And we've
Yes,
changed
I know.
And we've amended it in big ways. Like we've added income tax, we've added state or Senate election by popular vote. We've done a lot of stuff that the founders, if they were here today, they would be like, "Why did you do that? We set it up this way on purpose."
They would be spinning in their grave.
Yeah.
They are.
They are currently.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they have not flown out of the graves right now.
Yeah, and so I mean, that's my. So when people say that, one, that's dumb, and two, we shouldn't change it. Like the whole point of the Constitution is this is how the federal government works. You can change it if you want, but it's really hard. If you want to change stuff at the state level. That's because that's where the
pots? Need to
Yeah,
find a
can
way down.
can I speak? I personally find it a bit too vague for my liking. I'm just gonna be
It's
honest.
actually incredibly specific.
On some things, but on other things, it leaves it very
Give me
open to loopholes.
Give me an example of what's vague.
I can't think of any right on the top of my head, but
It's
let
really
me
vague,
get
but I
it.
can't
Hold
tell
up.
you.
It's let me just say what I'm thinking. It's pretty vague. Compared to other constitutions. Not gonna lie.
Well, honestly,
Constitution
our
is kind of meant to be a brief document, but
Well, I mean, one, our Constitution is actually really short. It's like 5,000
Yes.
words or something.
It's very
yeah,
short.
it's pretty short.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's very specific, I would argue. And most other constitutions, they have like 30, like the Brazil Constitution is like 500 pages long or something. It's like, nobody's got time to read that. Fuck off.
At least 5 pages is what I would consider pretty
People
reasonable.
love to like dunk on it for some reason, like the U.S. Constitution. I don't get it. They'll be like, "Your legislative body doesn't work." It's like, yeah, it was designed to not really work.
Yeah, exactly. That's a
What
feature.
the heck was that?
It's because
Yeah, like, that was-
it is.
You ever seen one before?
No, go ahead.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Romeo.
It's because
Is that
America
yours on?
is just the biggest. No, not the biggest country. It's just
I get it.
a really big Western country, so
Permission
they
to speak.
they care a lot.
Well,
No,
I mean,
I don't
okay,
know what it was,
So,
but it was
one
gonna
thing you
grease
should
your
read
ass
or listen
good.
to, and you can listen to it free on YouTube.
Just like
is
it did the
Federalist
captain.
Papers. And you should listen to them because they're very
Yeah.
important. Because they
Maybe.
talk about it's the people who drafted the
from Mickey?
Constitution
Dutch?
explaining why
Negative.
they drafted the Constitution the way
A
they
rookie.
did. What their intent was.
We need to get
It's very
above this
important
crap.
to know that
Link with the
because
B-net. One of our
you
drones
think,
must have seen where
things
they
are
hit.
vague and things
So
are
we're popping
specific
smoke
and
in the
it's
ladies'
short
mission?
and all this stuff.
Did he ever tell you
they
what you
set it up
wanted?
that way for a reason.
No.
Oh, all right. Okay, so
Doesn't matter. All I care about now is getting my man.
I'm not gonna.
Even you.
So we can go over specifically why they did stuff.
Okay. I'm just gonna be honest. I find it a bit. Here's the thing. For me, just that the Constitution. I think it's a bit too short.
To what? Short? Okay, what's
I
wrong?
think it's a bit too short.
What would you add to
Like the goal is to stop government overreach, but I don't think it stops government overreach that much.
Why?
Obviously, what?
Why do you
Excuse me? What did you say?
Why do you think that?
It's let's see this. It hasn't really been updated in the modern
Go ahead,
ways.
get over that. Why?
I'm
No.
okay. Like
Hold on,
it does
hold on,
not
hold on,
stop
hold on.
the government.
When let's try something so you can get your thoughts clear.
Okay.
Just provide a very specific, clear, and specific example of what you're talking about, and then we can talk about
Okay.
it. Okay?
Okay. So
Because just talking vague.
government overreach.
Yes.
Okay. So for government overreach, I feel like it should be updated, like at least 4 times a century, at least. Like
Okay, you're still
kind
being really
okay.
vague.
Modern medians, okay? Because before that, but well, what's the name? For government overreach. Before that, you had it was mail. Like the fastest internet you had was a horse. Then it was the telegram. Uh, then it was like radio. Then it was TV. Now we have the internet. I feel like it hasn't really been updated for the process of government, how the government behaves and reaches out. It just doesn't feel like
But
it's.
why? You're not. You're saying you're giving these vague examples. Why does the internet? Why does radio? Why does TV change how our government should function? Why?
It's a medium of communication between the government and the people. I think it's
But
very
why?
important.
I'm asking, I don't care about what it is. I'm asking why.
It affects how the government interacts with people, and not just like news agencies or not news agencies, like how they put out laws, how they behave, how they think. Because before that, like if it was only mail, letters, and in the 1800s, like nobody could read, like nobody gave a shit. Now people do give a shit, but now they have to go looking through boring websites from government agencies that nobody finds, nobody cares about. You have to go down a deep list. It's kind of hard
So,
to look for it unless you know the specific name.
So when eggs
You
drop,
have to go to that. Okay.
real quick. Do you think
Can
people
I continue?
Well, hold on, real quick. Do you think people back then did that?
Did what?
Did what you're describing? So you're talking about like, so you're saying back in the day, people. You're talking about how if you want to know what your government is doing, you have to go to some boring website, blah blah blah.
No.
What are you talking
No.
about?
I'm saying now.
Because again,
I'm saying.
here's the thing: you're not being specific. You're being very vague. Be
Okay.
specific. So
Okay.
let me give you an example of where I think the Constitution.
You'd have to go. You'd have to be able to read. You'd have to go to a local government building or agency or library where they have that document. You'd have to go find it. You'd have to be able to read it, then read it, and then you'd have to be like it's a very small segment of the population that would be willing to do that.
Yes, that's
But now,
true. Any
all right, okay. Now,
Good
what
argument.
you
More people are
understand?
probably more interested now than ever.
Genius.
Yes. Now, but I feel like government agencies are purposely trying to. Well, they always did and wanted to. They're purposely trying to hide what they're doing. They're not trying to be accountable.
Yeah,
Son of a gun!
yeah,
Like,
Get your ass out of the street.
you're right. Okay.
No,
So
okay,
What's
okay.
the point? Get to the point.
Wait for me!
okay. Well, it should update with how technology is going. Like, I think that government agencies should have to publish what they're doing actually, instead of just hiding it. Because they publish reports, of course,
Hold on.
memos,
They do.
reports, memos.
They do.
Yes, they do, but they obviously don't publish enough because there's always something missing. It's not like they can publish, we did this 1 minute, the next hour, oh, we did that at lunch break. I'm just thinking.
So you want like government employees basically like tweet everything they're doing.
No, obviously not.
Then what do you
But
want?
to-
Like, because here's the thing: the government does publish what it does. The thing is that
They don't publish enough.
no,
They publish everything.
they literally like I don't understand what you're saying when you say they don't publish enough,
Okay,
because the
okay.
government publishes. Here's the thing: like at my old units, you can read the budget reports from my old units on how they spent money and the training we did, all this stuff. Most of that stuff is unclassified. Obviously, there's some classified stuff, but like even the classified stuff, they can talk to some degree about stuff like that. So like, I don't.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm talking about government overreach. So what my opinion is not that you it's not that they don't exactly write enough. It's that they don't write enough to publish that stuff. Obviously they do. They have stupid amounts of paperwork and shit like that. But do they publish it? Do they put it out there? Maybe do they tell other, like, I wish there was an agency for them to report that stuff to, so that they're actually held responsible.
It's
FOIA.
the Government Accountability Office.
Wait, what? Okay.
We have an office called the Government Accountability Office.
And you can FOIA stuff too.
Yeah, you can FOIA whatever you want, and you can also, like, the Government Accountability Office, they literally publish every dollar that the government spends, where it goes, how it was spent, what they did. Like, you can literally go look up my receipts for when I stayed in a hotel for training. You can look up that receipt of me.
Okay, I'm searching it up. Okay, I'm searching it up. Tell me right now.
You have to know a lot of specifics about that.
Okay, I need to know how many how many bottles of wine did you drink in that hotel? I need to know right now.
Drink on the government dollar.
God damn it.
If I drank, it was my money that I spent, and you can't look at
Okay.
that gave my credit card. That's different.
Okay, I'm sad now. I can't know what your favorite flavor of liquor is. Type of liquor is, in flavor specifically. Whatever, it does not matter. Let's get back onto the topic. Okay, so we do. Okay, but usually in countries that do...
You just haven't looked it up because you don't know how, and I understand because most people don't know how.
Okay.
I don't know how exactly, but I know you can.
I genuinely do this shit for hours, and I didn't know. Oh my god.
It's hard, it's not easy. I mean, you're right, but you can do it.
Yes, Okay. Thank you for providing me with this
Part of
information.
that is that creepers like you don't stalk me and shit like that. So,
Oh.
you have to
Creeper,
give-
I'm not a creeper. I was saying it as a joke. You think I would do that?
No, I know.
How dare you?
I'm just
I
saying-
would do it in my
I'm just
free
saying
time
They
right now.
keep it somewhat private so that they make you give a reason for why you're doing it, and then they would obviously alert me if like for example, you could look up my social security number if you wanted, because I was a government employee.
Oh yes.
That wouldn't be hard to do, but then you'd have to give a reason. It wouldn't just be.
I am your landlord. Give social security
then I
number
would
if you
have to
refuse to
authorize
provide it. Then you're evicted.
I'm just not sure what this has to do with the Constitution.
Okay. It has everything to do with it. You're just a soy boy.
But you can do it now. That's what we're saying. You don't need to update the Constitution.
This is my problem. Okay. This is my problem. I was talking about how
you
you'd
don't
have
know
to go to the
Constitution
library.
works, honestly, because like I don't know.
I mean, I can see there is a genuine problem with the opaqueness of like government.
Yes,
But
that's my problem.
but I'm not sure how
Okay.
what the Constitution has to do with it. Like this
more has to do with government accountability. The Constitution is the federal government. What can they do? What they can't do? People's rights. How those rights interfere with government and what the government can do. Blah blah blah. Oh yeah, and rights of people and stuff like that. The different rights of people. Slavery is no longer a thing. Okay, whatever. Okay.
I am too.
I'm
I
an
mean, there's
idiot.
a-
I do not know how to process my thoughts. You know what the thing?
You're not
I'm
being
thinking
specific,
as
this
I
is
go.
Write them
I'm
down.
thinking as I go, but I know exactly what I'm going to say. But I don't know how to express it properly. Okay, so like you said, government opaqueness. Government opaqueness is a problem in my eyes because usually, what's the name? In other countries, they'd have a branch for this. Like the Government Accountability Office would be an entire branch of the government. In some countries, I think that's a little bit more useful than having a government agency that nobody knows about. I have done this stuff for hours, but I don't know about it.
Hold on, so your
I know about
solution-
other countries'
Hold on. So your
offices.
solution to government overreach is creating more government.
Yes. Not exactly. It already exists, but just
That's but
just
well,
make
you're-
it.
So So an agency.
Oh no, it's an admin.
We're all getting banned, bro.
He's not like Cody. Cody has muted me 3 times for the most vague of reasons.
Anyways, but the thing with so with branches of government in the U.S. Constitution, branches of government are exceptionally powerful. An agency is
Oh,
beholden to
God.
branches of government, where branches of government are beholden to each other. Like the 3 branches of our government are equal. You want to create a 4th branch that
I don't agree with that.
with the
I think that's how they've gotten, but I don't think that's how they were supposed to be or envisioned.
Well, I mean, in theory, the legislature is supposed to make sure the executive doesn't go crazy, and then the executive is supposed to yeah, I mean, I agree, but like, the general idea is that they kind of watch over each other and they kind of check each other's power.
I'm
Yes,
gonna take
historically-
a break. I got a question. Trumpet Man, what did you do to Sandwich Boy 489? What did you do to him? Or
Yeah, I have no idea.
did he leave or was he banned? He just started going off.
Government
that?
accountability over.
Sandwich Boy.
We need more government accountability and covert cabal. Change my mind.
Yes.
We need another.
We need another branch of.
Oh, Sandwich has left the server. Okay, he left.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you
I'm not seeing anything.
Interesting.
Okay, I can research for 5 minutes, okay? No, my problem is, it's not, like, in other countries, it would be another part of the government. Like, you know how we have executive branches? That would be the 3rd branch. But it has, it only has political power, and, okay, you may find it hilarious, but this is how government works in other places besides America, okay? I am not exactly an American. I don't feel like complaining and doing this shit.
I'm so confused. You're like, we want
That's what the government branch... You know what? Delta Words, I give up. You've won. I feel like an idiot. I'm having a bad day. I'm procrastinating. You have won. You have won. You have won. You know what? I am going to search up more obscure government agencies.
You're specific on it is and isn't a problem at the same time. Like,
I'm a literal child.
So let's just
not take
say
my
I'm
opinion
hypothetically
seriously.
an unbiased third party here. Can somebody catch me up on what's transpired thus far?
when Eggs Drop doesn't believe that there's enough government, that there's the Constitution-
Accountability.
Yeah, there's not enough government accountability, and I do agree. But the problem isn't with the government; it's with the people not taking account of their government.
Because
Sure,
it's hard
I mean, I guess
to
that's
know what the
kinda
government
fair.
is doing.
Well, that's what I would
I-
argue.
You only hear about the scandals. You never actually know,
But
like,
here's
stuff.
the thing,
It's
most of
because
So
people
the
don't
issue-
research it, but it's not like, maybe you want to search up what your state is doing in terms, like, you go, oh, people don't go, like, search up what their state or government is doing. Oh, they reduced spending on schools, they
Wait, hold on,
increased
hold
it on
on.
healthcare.
Hold on, I
That's
think I know
that's
you're
what I
saying.
want.
Wait, Eggs Drop. So what you want basically is every day to have.
It's just
like,
a microcosm. It's
No,
just a
no,
microcosm.
Eggs Drop. Hold on. What you want is basically.
It already exists.
No,
That's
shut
just
up,
what
shut
I.
up, Shut up! Shut up!
Oh,
Shut up!
God, okay,
I'm gonna
okay.
explain what I think you're saying because I think I understand what you're saying, and it's.
It already
really
exists.
No. You want a literal book mailed to everyone's house every day of
No,
what everything
no.
the government does.
No. Definitely.
I think
not.
what he's arguing. Well, so the thing that I'm getting here, the thing that I'm gleaning from this, is that people
not
aren't
that.
invested enough in their government processes,
Yes.
which can kind of come down to a lack of transparency, right?
That's true,
Yes.
But that's their problem. That's not the government.
No, it goes both ways. People aren't invested because they don't know where to go to search that
That's
stuff
their
up.
problem.
Thus, the government isn't invested
Maybe they should
in
get
releasing
hired.
more information.
At a certain point, I think that the design of the systems that are supposed to provide us that insight into government is convoluted to the point where even though we technically can access information, we can't really access information,
Okay.
if that makes sense, right?
Trumpet
So it's not
man,
transparent enough. It's not clear and straightforward enough. It's convoluted to the point where it's not practically accessible. It is literally accessible to the average man, but practically speaking, the hoops that you have to jump through, the lingo you have to understand, and so on and so forth is so complicated that you
It
can't
makes
really
petitioning
expect.
it. It makes
Thank
petitioning
you,
the government
man.
difficult.
You have said what I wanted to say through my ADHD.
Yeah.
I think the problem is the government's. It's more the government's too large. That central, faraway Washington government is so large.
Yeah.
You're one person.
It's
Yeah.
too big.
So, when Eggshaw,
It's
you
too
wanna,
big.
You want to know how to unironically fix it
Dang.
forever and ever and ever? We make
Yeah,
the government
we go.
small. We make the government small, like it was always
Yes,
intended
yes.
to be. The federal government.
Yes.
States
Do it.
We don't make another. We don't make another branch of government small.
No.
We don't do
No.
bullshit
No.
government
Never.
accountability.
Last bit. No, states. You think states are actually going to be responsible?
Yes.
Do you know how corrupt some states are?
They're corrupt because nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah, but they're no less corrupt than the feds.
Yeah. And
Okay, the
thing is, you
Fed
can
boys
actually-
are less corrupt because they
it's-
hide it well.
It's way easier to
You
fix
can-
a state than the
it's-
federal government. The problem with the federal government is Texans and Californians are voting on what happens in Wyoming. Like, that's what the problem
Beautiful.
is. At least in your state, at least in Oregon, for example, the problem is East versus West, and we can solve that problem easy. But if it's a federal issue, Texas is not, or California is not going to let
East
Eastern
Coast
Oregon-
versus West Coast, or what do you mean by East versus West?
No,
He means within Oregon itself.
Oh, okay, okay.
Like, just regional differences.
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Okay. I know something about West Coast or East Coast.
No, so in Eastern Oregon is way more red than Western Oregon is. And the only reason
Yes.
why Eastern Oregon stays in Western Oregon is because basically nobody will let Eastern Oregon become part of Idaho, even though that would be literally the best thing for everybody. And the reason why is, for example, California doesn't want to lose Blue Oregon. It doesn't want Oregon. It doesn't want Idaho to gain more and Blue Oregon to lose votes, because Oregon is, I think, 3 congressional seats. Or
Then it would
6.
become 5.
No, it'd become 3, and then Idaho would get 3. And it would be
Whatever.
3. So, like, it's like there's 5 Democrats from Oregon and 1 Republican. If those Eastern Oregon counties split from Western Oregon, it would be 3 Republicans from Idaho and 3 Democrats. Like, do you see what the problem is? Like, it's other states saying, oh, we'll lose power in Congress if this state splits up, rather than the best thing happening for everybody. We need less
Then the
federal government.
ultimate issue is that federal
But would-
government, instead of doing what it's intended to do, which is oversight of really what amounts to international affairs, it's instead looking into interstate issues. It's kind of a trend throughout American history. Initially, federal government is literally just like a glorified, Department of State. It's
Yeah.
foreign affairs, more or less just that. And then as we go further and further and further, what you see is things like the Interstate Commerce Act. You see, especially like post-Civil War, there's a lot of, let's think, like the KKK acts and stuff like that, which really enforce or create this power dynamic wherein the federal government is literally concerned with what's happening within state borders.
And
And then,
controls most of the states with, like, the BLM stuff.
exactly. So as time's gone on, the federal government has assumed interstate responsibilities, whereas
Well, they've
actual
always been
federal
in charge
system-
of that. The feds have always been in charge of interstate stuff, but it's intrastate stuff that they don't touch.
I feel
Well-
like the federal government kind of like, how do I say this? I feel like you can continue talking. I will think about how to say this.
Well, I read George Friedman's book on it, and he
Okay,
lays
I
it
got
out.
I got it. States just assume that the federal government is going to pay for what they're going to do, instead of like caring. And if it's like the problem, people don't actually think about their state government. Like, who thinks about their state government a lot? Like, do you think, oh no, the Oregon Department of Health has done X, Y, Z? Oh no.
Well,
Like-
they used to care more about that, but politics has gotten more and more nationalized that people
Yes,
don't
it's
pay
because,
attention to that local stuff.
It's because now you can speak with somebody from like across the globe, and it's much easier to speak across the nation. Now people don't really care about what's happening locally, and I think the internet is it's making people desocialized. They're just more to themselves, or less interaction with their community
That's not a problem.
directly. I feel like it's just Okay, can I continue? I know it's not really a major problem,
We've been talking this
but
whole time.
slowly.
Hold on. But two, that's not a but the internet is not what's causing this. It's been going on since way before the internet
Yes,
happened.
for decades. People are getting more invested in what's happening outside, and they're starting to lose focus on what's happening on the inside. I think that the internet has really done it in. I know I've only been alive with the internet.
It's not the big game changer in government that you think it is.
No, I don't.
The issue
think it is.
lies
I just think it
in-
is for people to people. People now can organize much better than they could before.
That isn't the issue. That has nothing to do with it. The internet is not why federal politics has become nationalist, or why politics has become nationalist.
They already were, but they're just becoming slowly.
I would
more
argue the issue with nationalized politics comes down to the assurance of, or the summation, I don't know, the assuming of responsibilities, right?
assumption.
So the reason why the federal government right now holds as much power as it does is because it's gradually assumed those powers throughout the course of its history. And as it- right. And then as it does, people gradually start to look more and more towards the federal government for their issues rather than their state government. Because it's like if, a guy shows up on the block, right? Somebody robs you, the police do nothing, so that guy, he solves the problem for you. Well, now you're going to go to that guy instead of the police, right? If the police are ineffective, then you're going to go to the person with the lead pipe who's willing to break somebody's patella. It's the same deal with government. So the issue comes down then to limiting the power of the federal government to the point where the federal government can't really control those intra-state issues. Then people will be forced to go to their state governments. Suddenly, federal government becomes a foreign policy thing, and people will understand that when that actually becomes reflected in the actions of government itself.
I think there would be a way bigger deal about how local governments spend their money instead of people not caring until a problem arises. Because if people actually knew what Flint was doing with their water beforehand, then they would have absolutely done something.
People of Flint could have fixed their problem years ago. They just didn't. And that's their problem. And I don't see why we should pay for that. That's their problem, not mine.
I never said you had to pay for it. I was talking about how they could influence their local government to do something because they'd have a larger interest to investigate what their local government is doing, not to just ignore it.
Yeah, but there's also that gets into like different things though, because there's also the way that the U.S. has developed since it can't sustain itself like organically at like a local level.
Yeah, it can.
Like
It
just
needs,
like
imports and
maintenance.
exports.
Well, no, I'm just even talking locally, like the maintenance of like roads and stuff, and like sewer, all that kind of stuff. Like the tax base of towns in most cases cannot afford the like roads, the like all that infrastructure that it has built, and it ends up when those bills come due, it ends up them either going bankrupt or going to the federal government, like Flint did, because Flint probably didn't have the money to fix all their lead pipes, so they did the cheap thing, and then it bit them in the ass, and then it became a big national story, and then they had to go to the feds, and the feds had to bail them out.
Can I speak on that topic? Oh, I thought my headset disconnected. Okay. I'm just asking to speak so I don't interrupt somebody while they're speaking. I don't want to be rude.
Go ahead.
I think it's because, how depends on the state you're living, but how much money that state gets in taxes compared to what the national government gets. I feel like that because federal government has grown so large, and both local and federal governments waste so much money. Even I'm not going to use the military as an example. I've heard stories of government agencies in my area, local ones, not even the state, spending $1 million on like the most convoluted of things. They had to fix like a 50-meter stretch, 150 feet stretch of highway, and they spent $1 million over like 4 months.
Yeah.
How? Because they're extremely inefficient. They're just wasting money. I think it's almost purposeful, and it's both a problem for both sides. Like Flint decided to go okay, let's cut water instead of cutting the inefficiencies, because they obviously have inefficiencies. Their city is absolute shit. It's like Detroit.
Well, yeah.
Like,
No, I mean, I agree. Listen, I agree, and I am someone who believes that any amount, like, literally, the government should be the last thing that we do to fix problems, not the first. So, like, you're preaching to the choir.
okay. I think I understand what that figure of speech means. I'm preaching to people who agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I don't disagree that the government is not efficient at all. I agree wholeheartedly. I think anyone who thinks that the first solution to a problem is the government is literally fucking retarded.
No, it's just when I was talking about the making another executive branch, like what's that agency's name again? Government Accountability Office, like another branch. You said executive does that. Well, they're obviously doing a piss poor job of that. Like, America does not have that high of a corruption rate, but I feel that is shockingly high. I would not believe it for a minute. Obviously, you don't have to bribe a cop on the street or something like that. I think it's just internally, and it gets hidden under the rug until a problem arises, and because of that, we just don't give a shit, and we don't have anything to invest in our government.
That's our
Yes, that is our problem, but it's partly because of the government and the way we behave with it that has made them just neglect it, because nobody gives a shit anymore. Slowly, people no longer give a shit. Okay, we can just do more bullshit. They won't care. What are they gonna do?
No, I feel like, especially when we're talking about things like corruption, there's in government, there's definitely things that need to be de-legislated, and there's things that do need to be legislated. So, like with corruption, right? I think a big source of what would traditionally be considered that comes from lobbying, right? When you think about lobbying, people think about advocation, but what it really comes down to is like really sleazy under-the-counter donations, personal favors, things like that. So, like when we can eliminate things like that, where people are literally paying off politicians, but in a legal sense, then you can cut back on a lot of the issues with government right off the bat, right there. So it's not so much the fact that the executive or whatever department or what have you isn't doing a good enough job cutting back on corruption. It's the fact that there's not enough laws on the book in regards to that specifically that they can actually use to pursue actual sources of corruption.
There's and there's a lot, and like lobbying's quite like legislated on.
I would argue not enough, though. Like when you look at,
you know what I would argue? We need to get rid of our lobbying laws because clearly they're not working.
how do you figure? Like, I understand the whole they're not working thing, but how do you figure?
Why should we make more? Why not get rid of the bad ones first, and then figure out new ways to deal with it?
Because I'm arguing they're not on top of it enough, right? They obviously say you can't flat out give a politician money, but there's nothing about donating to this one organization that feeds into another organization that feeds into the lobby or into the politician, right? When we're talking about PACs, super PACs, that sort of thing, and all the campaign donation shebang that goes on with that, right? All of that is more or less unregulated because it's technically like off the books. It's stuff that is happening that's beyond the scope of current legislation. The legislation isn't failing in that it's addressing the issue poorly. It's failing in that it's not addressing the issue at all.
I'd like to speak. Okay. The lobbying, I'm kind of mixed on this topic. Lobbying could just be speaking with that person, doing them a personal favor. That has no monetary value, but it changes the way they vote. They don't. Politicians don't vote because of how they personally feel. They vote because of what they will make them money. They don't vote based on what the people that voted them in. What will get them elected. They don't. But that doesn't always represent what the people they that voted for them wanted. And I think that first past the post is not the best, but it's what we have. I'm not saying, oh, we need to remove it now. It's just that it just makes it whoever wins a percent. Well, we have the electoral system, but first past the post means that the second group gets no representation, but they can just be assholes in Congress or the Senate and just push things back when they shouldn't be. Bipartisan politics is super fucking annoying. I hate the American politician system.
What's up?
Do you know who Nick Brigada is?
No.
You should look him up. He's a lawyer on YouTube, does stuff. I like his take on political corruption. His take is we should get rid of all the lobbying legislation because all it does is it gives power to people who get to define the rules.
Lawyers.
Of the game. Yeah, well, it gets, and then they get to define what is and isn't corruption, and then those guys, they basically get to pick and choose who is or isn't corrupt. So they basically get to pick and choose, like who gets to be corrupt, basically, what corruption is allowed. And what Nick Brigada says is that as long as everyone, if you just make it equal, everyone gets to be equally corrupt.
Okay. Well, by that logic, we shouldn't have any laws at all. That's like arguing anarchy at that point. Because you could say hypothetical. No. Hear me out. So if we're saying those who pass the laws can theoretically create those laws to their benefit, which is true. If we're saying that invalidates the concept of laws altogether, then in this specific case scenario, if we're saying that invalidates the concept of lobbying laws, then that invalidates the concepts of laws altogether. Because I could say, theoretically, I could say that the representative for this district in Wyoming is secretly a Mexican drug smuggler. So then he could have influence over laws in regards to drugs and narcotics. Suddenly, that means that those... Well, by your logic, right? So your logic, or the logic of Nick Brigada, is that...
a Mexican drug smuggler. He's doing something else to earn money, not being corrupt.
Fair enough, but you're missing my point. So Nick Brigada's logic, if I'm following this correctly, is that those in charge of lobbying laws are the people who can determine who's corrupt, who's not corrupt through those laws. So we shouldn't have those laws at all because that means that everybody's equal in the realm of corruption.
Yes, you can't
right?
trust anyone with the gun in government because they will use it to shoot you.
Okay, so if we apply that to literally any other law, any other type of law, anybody in government can be involved in any activity which they're legislating.
Yes.
So by that logic, by the logic that they can be involved in that activity and therefore they should not legislate that activity because they can legislate it to their advantage.
Yes.
If we're using that logic,
Yes.
then it invalidates the law,
I'm
the
getting
concept
so
of
hard
laws
right now, thank
altogether. Okay, so what we're saying is that laws shouldn't exist.
I mean, ideally, obviously that's not going to happen, but ideally, yes.
Ideally, crime wouldn't exist.
Right,
Ban
except
crime, problem
that's
solved.
an absolutely piss poor take.
Pilot, let's just ban crime, problem solved. I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, like, that's the thing, is that it's a balance. You are right that
Right.
The ultimate conclusion is that we wouldn't have laws. You are correct. We shouldn't have laws. Ideally, everyone should just be good and nice to each other. We have laws because people can't do that. The problem is that you have to be very careful with who you choose and what power you give them. This is Nick Brigada's point. You have to be very careful with what power you choose to give them because they could use it to hurt you.
Okay, but on the same token, okay, that person who could be corrupt and who could be making corruption legislation that benefits them.
That's the thing. We could assume
Okay, and we can assume that everybody in Congress is a murderer, or that everybody in Congress is a drug smuggler. Therefore, they should not be able to legislate anything in regards to anything.
Well, okay,
That's
so
the ultimate lesson from
I
that.
think what you're missing is that we should be very careful what we choose to give people, and I don't think political corruption is something we should give people because it can act as a barrier to entry to allow people in the government. Because one problem is that political spending, you have to spend a lot of money to get into politics, and you're right. If you don't have a super PAC backing you up, it's really hard to get into politics. But banning super PACs wouldn't solve that because there would just be another way that people would basically create super PACs again. Super PACs have always existed. They're not a new thing.
Right.
So
Well, at that point, it's a multi-stemmed issue, though. So there is the issue of the finances, the super PACs, all of that, the funding, the under-the-table funding that can influence sway politicians and helps them get to office. And part of what enables that is literally the political system that we've created. So if we go even further with this and we institute hardcore term limits,
I don't think term limits would solve either of these. So.
how so?
Because I mean, okay, so here's the thing. You're let's say all term limits are 4 years. You like people.
I would
just-
argue probably
No,
something
but
to the
let's just-
tune of 1 year would be good, but yeah, let's keep going.
Well, I mean, we could go as hardcore as we want. We could have like 1 day.
Mhm.
Like, you literally have you're in
Yeah.
office for 1 day and that's it. People would just go in and they would just pass a law that would benefit some benefactor, and then they would get a job at that benefactor, some sweet kickback that wouldn't count technically as a kickback. Somehow they would find a way. People are way smarter than the government. Like, this is the thing. You're assuming the government is really smart. The government's not really smart. The government's full of really stupid people. And they would find a way, and then they would get that kickback, and bing bang boom. Yeah, it doesn't work. This always happens.
I think the issue here, I don't disagree with you. The government is inherently dumb. It is inherently inefficient,
But the thing is,
and
people find a
people
way around it. That's the
right.
problem.
But we can create systems that make it difficult enough to get around it,
I would
that
argue
it
we can't.
effectively cuts back on it.
I would
Not
argue we
not
can't.
completely. Yeah, we can't completely stop everything. I can't
don't even
completely
think-
stop
I don't even
murderers
think
from
it's
murdering.
even remotely effective at stopping it.
I disagree. I think we can say you can't overtly take this. We can't do stuff like this. There are conflicts of interest, and I think those can be reasonably enforced to the point where it does cut back on some instances. Things are always going to exist. Corruption's always going to exist. That's always an issue when you're dealing with voting, when you're dealing with politics. But we can say the guy can't sit outside of a ballot box with a shotgun and say, you got to vote for this man. And we can say that politicians can't immediately...
That's the thing.
Okay, but that's not going to happen. You're assuming everybody's going to take that chance.
I mean, it's just,
It could theoretically happen.
It's just as much of a possibility as your example.
If we look at the historical... Okay, this is kind of going on a tangent here, but if we look at the historical precedent for the man sitting outside of the ballot box with a shotgun, people don't shoot him, people vote with him, because that's what happens. People are complacent to authority figures. So if we say that guy can't do that, and we physically prevent him from doing that, then we can cut back on overt forms of oppression, of corruption, of so on and so forth like that. In the same token, we can say...
Away the agency of the people to solve the problem, and you're giving it to
I'm gonna go for like 20 minutes. I hope you guys are still here when I get back. Have a good time. If I don't, bye bye.
But that's the problem is that people don't have agency with their government. They don't feel that they have agency with their government, and you're advocating the solution to the problem is take more agency away from the people. Take the little that they have and give it to someone else. No, people need more agency, and my nose is stuffed as fuck.
I think that there is a balance that needs to exist. Because in a modern society, we can't have a society without government, and we can't have a society with excessive government. Both mean failure, ultimately, in the long run. If you oppress people, eventually that's going to topple, and if you give people the complete freedom to do whatever, that's eventually going to fail too. It doesn't work. So there's a balance that needs to be achieved. So arguing...
But I'm arguing any system that gives you more freedom is better than a system that gives you less.
So ultimately, what you're arguing is that no government is better than government,
Yes.
and you literally just agreed with me that we can't have a society without government. Government is a necessary evil,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not.
So-
That's not cognitive dissonance. I'm just being. That's not cognitive dissonance. I understand reality and idealism.
Right. So so what I'm getting here is that the end goal is to limit government as much as possible. So there is a balance that can be achieved between limit of freedom and freedom to the point where it's acceptable how much is where.
Yes, but again.
Exactly.
freedom is
So-
better than less.
Correct. But that doesn't mean that absolute freedom is necessarily better than
not
government.
arguing. So here's the thing. I would argue the only things government can objectively do okay are related to basically enforcing banning. Anything outside of that, the government can't do it. Because the government is violence, ultimately. That is, everything the government does is violence. Even enforcing anti-corruption is violence. So I don't think anything, if you advocate for anything the government does that is non-violent, it results in violence. And it results in something worse.
Okay, but I would deem that acceptable if it means maintaining as much neutrality within a society as possible.
That's the thing. That's what
It
I'm
won't
saying.
be, but we can still
Here's the
strive
thing.
for it.
Here's the thing, Pilot. 99.9% of people can agree that murder is bad. Okay, like
Mhm.
there are very few people who think that murder is something good and something that we should allow in society. Republicans, Democrats, commies, ANCAPs, pedos, whatever, everyone agrees, right? Those are the only legitimate things I think the government can do that is okay, is stuff like that.
Stuff wherein everybody agrees on one specific thing.
Overwhelmingly agrees.
Overwhelming. So I would argue that people overwhelmingly agree that corruption is bad.
Yes.
Even corrupt officials.
Hold on. Yes. Well, yes. But that's
Okay.
But here's the thing. Murder is a very specific thing. Someone is dead, and
Yes.
there was malice of intent or whatever. We can agree that corruption is very non-specific, and because of that, and the other thing is, murder is objectively provable. There's a dead fucking body. What is objectively provable about corruption? It's really hard to objectively prove corruption because it, and then who controls the definition is important, and that makes it very.
That applies to murder too.
No, it doesn't. Murder is very.
Yes, it does.
subjective.
No, your judgment of murder is that there's a dead body. But if I find a dead body in the middle of the woods, I still have to prove that somebody killed him. Just the same. And that requires a definition of murder, okay? If he was... Wait, no. So if there's a dead body in the middle of the woods, nobody saw it happen, I still have to establish a definition of murder. I still have to take in evidence. I still have to develop an intent and an actual mode of how things happened.
If there is evidence of foul play, I don't think it's unreasonable to try to investigate.
Right.
But
And just the same thing applies to corruption. If there is clear evidence of somebody taking actual monetary
okay, so
tangible items from somebody else and then voting in accordance to them.
Here's a
Okay.
question. So you're a congressman, and
Yep.
let's say you have a friend
Mm-hmm.
in your district, and you go out to lunch with him, and you and your friend, you have a deal where one time you'll pay for, like, if it's or like let's say this, you have a friend, you go out and you guys go out to dinner, and you make a bet that if your team wins, he has to pay, and if his team wins, you have to pay. You know what I'm saying, right?
Right. Yep.
Let's say ultimately he has to pay for the dinner. Now, from the outside, it's just a game that you and your friend are playing, but to other people who might not understand, that might look like he's buying you dinner as a payoff. And
I would argue that it's...
That's the difference between murder and corruption, because it's pretty easy, like, even in the most convoluted sense of murder, where, like, let's say it's like a crime of passion or it's an accident like manslaughter, there are still ways to objectively prove what happened. With corruption, it's far less. It's less... Go ahead.
I would argue that, especially as you approach like the national echelons of government, there is a very clear distinction between somebody paying somebody off and somebody paying for a meal. I think that it is fundamentally... No, I think it is fundamentally expected that politicians have meals paid for them at some point. Somebody's going to organize a banquet, or somebody's going to sit down with them.
Is what you're saying.
I would argue that, no, it's very unreasonable to say that a meal is corruption. Corruption on an actual corrupt scale.
This is what I'm saying, is it's very slippery and it's not as clear cut as murder, where murder is very...
a provable transaction of a very clear transaction of goods, specifically financial items, in exchange for some sort of vote would constitute corruption, some sort of policy, what have you. So that wouldn't necessarily be a meal, right? That's not necessarily, I would argue,
Maybe. I mean, again,
a trans.
but other people don't know, is what I'm saying. With murder,
Other people would know.
Maybe.
It's very unreasonable to say that somebody bought somebody else a meal and that influenced a national scandal, right? Just the same, it's unreasonable to say that one man was restraining another man and that resulted in murder, right? There are very subtle nuances, or not necessarily subtle, but there are gray areas here at play. But by and large, I would say that most cases of murder or corruption or what have you that happen across the criminal justice system are very clear. It's not a simple meal, or it's not an officer restraining a man on the ground using trained protocol. It is instead a transaction of multiple millions of dollars, or a very clear,
Millions of dollars.
not necessarily. I'm saying that in most case scenarios, there's going to be.
This is the thing. If you have to use
But at the same
names
time,
and stuff, if you have to use
but that
things
applies to
besides-
murder. That applies to murder.
It applies to murder in way fewer circumstances. I could probably count on all 10
Okay, but it still applies to murder.
But
Still
you can't,
applies
but
to
you
murder.
can't do that. You probably couldn't do any form of corruption, one single form of corruption, and do that.
What do you mean? Do what?
Like have situations that are vague. What I'm saying is you can't account for all the vague situations in corruption. Where in murder there are probably like maybe a dozen vague situations that could possibly happen in any murder circumstance ever that are vague and require.
I would argue it's the contrary. The murder itself is very vague in that you have to establish a lot of various aspects and you have to be able to prove them. It's the same deal with corruption.
Yes, but that's
It's
what makes it objective. That's what I'm saying.
and the same way corruption can be objective. There are objective transferences of finances, and there are objective records of voting, of meeting, of so on and so forth. And with corruption, I would argue, again, if corruption is literally somebody sitting down for a meal, that wouldn't necessarily constitute something that would
What I'm
have to be
saying is
handled.
that maybe that's to you, but not to other people. What I'm saying
What I'm
is that
saying-
most people can agree that if you and I get in a fight and I bash your head against, let's say, the stairwell, and I didn't intend to kill you, most people would agree that is still murder because we got in a fight and it resulted in your death.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, second-degree manslaughter, I want to say.
Something
Or
like that,
second-degree
yeah.
murder, sorry, not
Probably-
manslaughter. But
No, it'd be
yeah.
manslaughter. Third degree is manslaughter. Second degree is not premeditated. First degree is premeditated.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, like most people
Yeah, but it'd be
objectively-
manslaughter.
But most people can objectively agree, whereas with corruption, it's way stickier, or it's way slipperier. Sorry.
I would argue not necessarily. With corruption, I think in an ideal situation, the only issues that would really be handled by government, not by government, but by court, by whatever, would be those where there is, again, a verifiable large transferal of money, of goods, of what have you, or a very clear job or conflict of interest or whatever that comes into play. That conflicts with a decision that a politician makes. A simple meal at a diner would not constitute that. A simple meal at a diner, if that's enough to sway a politician, would really just result in a shitty politician who would be voted out of office. At that point,
I can't
it comes
think
down
right
to
now, but I'm sure something like that has sunk a politician's career. I'm sure something like that has happened before.
right. And I would argue that if a politician is swayed by a $12 meal, then he's going to be voted out of office. That
Hold
comes
on,
down on
I'm
his
not-
electorate.
I'm not saying the politician is swayed. I'm saying other people think that the politician was swayed. That's what I'm saying.
Then they'll elect him out of office. I think that corruption legislation should cover large multinational, not multinational, but large multi-million dollar scandals, affairs, what have you,
But that's
right?
not
Think,
corruption.
okay, but I think that's the corruption that should be addressed by corruption legislation. Things that,
We already have stuff. That's the other thing.
But the point is that you argued that we shouldn't have that anymore.
Yeah, because I don't think it's effective. That's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
it is effective. I think when you have a railroad company, for instance, what was it, like the Union Pacific scandal or whatever under Grant's administration, when you have a railroad company that's not answering to the people of the United States, and they're literally influencing the decisions of Congress to create these massive construction projects where they're getting 100% gains right into their pockets, right? When you have situations like that,
Then why aren't the people voting those people out of office? Why do we need a third
people
body?
can vote.
Wait, hold
The
on.
people can
Tyler, why
vote
do we
the.
need another thing that may do what the people want, or maybe it doesn't do what the people want, but it has effect on what the people want. Maybe people like their politicians, or maybe they don't.
I'm arguing that in that sort of situation where you have this big corporation that's literally meddling in U.S. politics, right? For millions and millions of tax dollars to be embezzled into the owners of that corporation, right? Again, think that railroad scandal.
Yes.
I'm arguing that even though the people can vote those politicians out of office, for there to truly be justice, those funds have to be regained in some way, shape, or form. That means criminal, or actually, I guess in that situation, that would technically fall under civil law. That means civil recourse, and I would argue that the people in charge of that means those at the helm of the corporation and those within Congress who are implicated in the scandal itself, should face more consequence than just the congressional representatives being voted out of office. I'm arguing that they should face criminal repercussions for the literal loss of tens of millions of dollars.
What I'm saying is that the risk that power will be used for evil purposes is far greater and far more of a reasonable reality than mitigating the potential corruption.
I would not. When you go back to the United States corruption legislation, you see those situations all the time where those situations happen frequently, but that doesn't happen very frequently anymore, at least at that scale.
So here's the question: Is the U.S. more or less corrupt?
I would argue by virtue of the larger government, it's more corrupt, but in smaller ways.
Okay, so it actually hasn't. So what I'm trying to point out is that we've created all this anti-corruption legislation. We've done all this stuff. We've had all this history, all this legislation, all this bullshit. And we haven't solved the problem, and it's gotten worse, and it's gotten harder to solve. So what would more government solve that it already hasn't?
I would argue that it's gotten worse at smaller levels. It's beyond the scope of the legislation but it's beyond the scope of the legislation I'm arguing for. I'm arguing for legislation that prevents Union Pacific Railroad from directly paying off Tim Burton and, the California Senate, so then they can pass this construction project with this shadow company that's literally upselling the government for tens of millions of dollars. I'm saying that legislation should be in place to prevent that, to prevent the embezzlement of tens of millions of dollars.
But Tyler,
I'm not saying
that legislation is already in place, and again, I would argue it is not effective.
But the point is to prevent large-scale corruption like that. It's not to prevent.
We can feel good that we're trying to do something. Okay.
No, we can feel like we are doing something because we're preventing Tim Burton in Congress. Yes, we are. We're preventing Tim Burton from embezzling $10 million from a fake construction project. That's the point of the legislation. It's not to prevent your Chicago representative or your Chicago city councilman from taking a couple extra dollars for skewing this construction project to this one sleazy company instead of the other sleazy company. The point is to prevent tens of millions of tax dollars from going from federal government hand to federal government hand and being magically lost. And it does that. Again, it's beyond the scope of the legislation to prevent that small time.
But I would argue there's plenty of other instances where it doesn't. It's not effective.
Right. Except you're addressing small-scale corruption, which is a different issue entirely.
Well, and like I said, it probably does worse because it acts as a gatekeeping mechanism to prevent people who would be effective in government from getting in and keeps political insiders in, which is...
So you're arguing that... you're
is
arguing
my
that
ultimate
for me to
problem.
be effective in government, I have to have ties to the commercial industry that will directly pay
No,
me
I don't.
off if I
I don't give a
embezzle
fuck.
money for them.
No, 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 no. I don't give a fuck who you work for before. I don't care. I think the
No,
whole
it's
point.
about who you work for when you're within government.
Yeah.
And that's the point of the legislation, to
Well,
control that.
Well, hold on. Who I think if you're a legislature, who you work for in government is the people who elected you, the voters.
Yes.
And if you fail to do what they elected you to do, they should just vote you out. Like, here's the thing. Corruption's easy because if you're being corrupt and you're obviously out, you're selling your state out or whatever, your local area out for some fat cat contract, I don't think that we don't need an investigation to figure it out. It's very easy to see what you're doing and why you're doing it, and people should just vote you out. I think what you're advocating for takes it away from the people because then the people just expect something to happen. One sec, I need to take a piss. I'm gonna freaking explode.
Okay. Oh, hang tight. Let me know when you're back.
I think he's just more of a libertarian than you.
I think it's a different approach. I agree. I think that if there is that obvious corruption taking place, the politicians should be taken out of office. But at the same time, I think that they should face further repercussions, right? Because when we're looking at that, we're ultimately looking at literally millions of dollars. In the situation I presented, you're looking at millions of dollars, more than that in today's money, but again, irrelevant, literally disappearing. That's taxpayer dollars going to politicians and going to the corporate members of Union Pacific or what have you. So I think that there should still be legislation on the books that gives an ability to the government to further pursue those politicians to recover those funds, further pursue those corporate heads to recover those funds from them, and to go ahead and pursue criminal matters too against those people to literally prevent them from doing something like that again. Otherwise, what you get is you get Union Pacific paying off the next guy who's elected into the next seat, and you see the situation all over again.
And you just keep voting them out until people realize, until whoever's elected is like, oh, if I take the money from Union Pacific, I will get voted out, and that'll be a big problem for me.
Except, again, there's still that tens of millions of dollars, and this is 1860s money.
Somebody's calling me on my Fed phone.
Fed phone.
My Fed phone.
The phone he uses exclusively for calling the IRS to complain about how it's bullshit he's getting taxed this much.
I fucking hate being shot down.
What are you playing?
War Thunder.
Oh.
Man, that was weird. Somebody called me on my computer.
Okay, but what I'm arguing is that you can vote people off, and I think that's important, but you are also looking... Yes, I agree.
You don't
But
think,
I
like,
think
ethics issues?
What?
Like, ethics issues?
The only people who should care about ethics are the voters.
Yeah, but I mean, like...
Listen, if you keep voting in shitty people, you fucking deserve what you vote, what you get.
Yeah, no, I mean, but, oh my gosh. Impeachment and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, impeachment processes for stuff like that. I mean, that's not the voters doing it.
I mean, well, okay, impeachment's kind of a weird thing anyways, so... It's... I don't know. I don't like impeachment because, again, it's a non-voter way of solving a problem.
Of removing people?
Yeah. I think the only way we should get rid of politicians is by election. That's it. And but I do think electors or voters should literally, like, if one voter says we need a re-election, they should do it. So like literally, politicians, like, in my point of view, they couldn't be corrupt because they're always running for election, because every day someone would be like, we need another re-election. Which I know is ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
that's
back
not
to my
like
final point.
a real solution.
It's a meme solution, but damn it, I love my meme solution. Go ahead, Pilot.
I do ultimately recognize that politicians should only be removed through that election, and I do think that things like special elections, recalls, what have you, should exist should something arise that demands that somebody be unseated immediately. I think that should be put to the people, and I totally agree with you there. But I also think that you're looking at, again, literally tens of millions of dollars. In this one case scenario I presented, and that's 1860s money, so do the math, you're looking at a very large sum of money that has been lost by the government. So I think that there should be some way that the government can pursue that money, can regain it from the corporate entities and the politicians who unlawfully took it, and can be put back into the government and used the way that it's supposed to.
You know how we can solve that?
Through legislation.
No, well, hold on. Yes, but the voters elect someone,
Yeah.
and they say, okay, we're gonna pass this bill that says, yeah, that guy who fucked with us last time, they're gonna pay back everything they stole from us.
So we pass anti-corruption legislation that demands that people repay it. Gotcha. Okay.
For that specific
Okay.
case,
So
not
only for
general.
that specific case. So now you're proposing that any legislative body has to deal with every single minute issue that happens repeatedly, instead of passing one blanket. I disagree. I think that's dumb.
Every day. I think
If
yes, every day.
If there is not a law on the book that says that the government will regain my money that was unlawfully stolen from the government, that I gave to the government, expecting the government to use it, I think that I should have the right. I think I should have the right as a citizen to regain that money myself. I should have the legal right to pick up my shotgun, to go to the front door of Union Pacific, to bust it down, to put a slug in the head of the guy who paid off a politician, and to go to his little safe in the corner and take my money out of it.
One, unironically, yes, but two, like that, like, what are you even saying? Like that people would take like vigilantism into their, like people would do that anyways. People that do that now, like there's the bulldozer, so like,
Bro, based.
yeah,
But
like,
it's illegal. I am saying that if the government will not take the money that was taken from me in taxes back from the people who stole it from them, that I should have the right as a person to take that matter into my own hands. So either we have complete anarchy, this is what I think, either we have complete anarchy, or we have the laws on the books that give the government the ability to seize that money back from private corporate entities themselves.
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I don't care about like, so like the legislation thing, that's just like, again, you're right, that would be annoying because you'd have to do it every single time, but I don't think you understand. I don't give a fuck what the government does. I think the less the government does, the better. And if people solve their own damn problems, then it wouldn't be a problem to begin with. There wouldn't be a need for corruption, for people being paid off by Union Pacific, if the government was the one issuing the railroad contracts, if people figured it out at their local level, how to deal with it, you know?
Yes, but ultimately that's not going to happen because for massive, large-scale... No, it isn't going to happen because for massive, large-scale infrastructure projects like that, people don't collectively do that on their own dime. It takes a government seizing money from them to force them into doing it.
That's just wrong.
I disagree. When we're looking at a railroad that literally costs billions of dollars in today money, that literally... Private people would just build a dirt road that would work good enough, and then they would innovate to the point of using it. Yes.
No,
it is not horseshit. Nobody is spending multiple billions of dollars on a thing that's not paid for, that they don't have a guaranteed return on.
Yes,
When the government is paying for that...
They do it all the time. People do it all the time now. Like, that's just such fucking horseshit. Like, people...
Not to that scale.
Yes, they do. Right now, they do.
No.
They do it
No.
right now. Okay.
And I guarantee you, the companies that take
hold
that
on,
risk are
hold on,
taking
hold on,
government
hold on,
contracts
hold
for
on.
it too.
Let me give you an
Okay.
example.
Yep.
What is peak? Do you know what peak oil is?
No.
Okay, peak oil is the theory that we have it started in the well, it's been around forever. It's been around as long as oil's been around, but in the 70s it got really popular. What it basically
Oh yeah.
What it basically was is that they said in the 70s with everything, but in the 70s specifically, they said we have reached maximum oil production. We are pumping as much oil from as many wells as we will ever make, and there will be a decline in oil. And that's why in the 70s there are all these movies like Mad Max about like there's an oil crisis and all that shit. You know what
Right.
happened?
And then we innovated and then produced more efficient means. Yes.
Yes. And that happens all the time now.
I'm so glad
And
he's dead.
it didn't take the government interfering in the market to figure out how to produce more oil. It was from greedy motherfuckers in the oil industry figuring out ways to figure out how to pump more oil out of the ground. Now some of it's shitty, I don't disagree, but people will find a way. If it makes money, they will find a way to make it make money for them.
I would argue that in the case of multi-billion-dollar railroads, where there is not a guaranteed return. Remember, we're talking not about real.
Return with the oil.
Yeah, right. But you're talking about. Yes, there was. There was an established oil-based industry. Yes, there was.
There was a railroad.
For the last
You don't think
200
railroad
years.
would make money? You don't think
No, the railroads
railroad
made
was
a lot of
literally
money.
paid for. The
The
railroad
railroads
was
made a lot
paid
of money
for
based
by the
off
government.
real estate. They got huge, like all those contracts that, like, you get every other mile or whatever. The railroad companies had enormous.
and that was by the government. That was because the government allowed them to, like, they would have made money, but they wouldn't have done it by the underhanded shit that they did.
When
Yeah, but
you're
you also
looking-
would have delayed the, I guess, progress. You would have delayed that. Sure, it may have happened. That
wouldn't
railroad
happen.
might have not have been built in the 1850s or 1860s. It might have been the 1870s.
And maybe it would be better if it was built later. You're assuming that because the railroad was built when it was built, is that was the best time to build the railroad.
I'm assuming that because the railroad was built when it was built, it would have been built then, or it wouldn't have been built at all. And that's because the railroad was built at that point because the government paid for it. The government contracts paid for that railroad, and then the railroad gets all the benefits.
Government innovation, that's horseshit. The government doesn't innovate at all. It's always private people who innovate, and the government
The concept of a railroad existed since the 1820s, but I'm arguing that for the multi-billion-dollar railroad that spanned across the Rocky Mountains and from sea to shining sea, yada yada yada, for that to happen, it took the guaranteed money provided by the government by contract to Union Pacific and Union Central and whatever else,
The
all the
Northern
other,
Pacific.
yeah, all of those fancy railroads that were doing this, that, and the other thing. For that to happen, for such a large-scale project to occur, it took those those companies getting guaranteed money from the government to pay for it. I'm saying for the only way for those massive infrastructure projects to happen is through government.
That's not true at all.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. That's fucking horseshit. The government does not lead innovation. The government doesn't lead more prosperity.
I'm not arguing it leads innovation. I'm arguing that it leads the development of large-scale infrastructure. Railroad existed before the government did it. The concept of a highway existed before the government passed the Interstate Highway Act. The concept of...
Okay, here's what I would say. We have too many roads now, and it's because the government is inefficient, and it spends way too much money on roads that we don't need, and because of that, we're building roads that people don't need. Or that we could do privately, and it would be more efficient if we did it privately.
On a small scale, sure, but I would argue that things like the interstate that happened, again, only because the only entity willing to pay for a multi-lane highway through the middle of bumfuck middle of nowhere, North Dakota.
Figure out how to fund it themselves, or maybe they don't need it. Maybe was doing okay before, or whatever. You're assuming
But that highway, that interstate enabled the transport of goods across the United States by truck. It doesn't matter if the community needed it.
There were
Yes, but interstates made it more efficient. I'm arguing that those large scales.
said what we have now is less efficient.
Okay, but again, the issue comes down to financing. If you could find a way to privately build a railroad or concrete paved highway continually maintained across the United States privately through toll roads and investors and what have you, then all the power to you. But nobody's going to do that in the middle of North Dakota. Nobody's going to create that solution in North Dakota,
Yes, because
except the government.
inefficient. You're arguing.
Right, except that that inefficientness is necessary to the function of the modern economy.
That is fucking retarded. I'm just gonna be straight with you.
Okay.
Efficiency is never a good thing. We should never be blowing money that we don't need to blow on bullshit.
Don't let them near the Audi building.
But we do need to blow it. Again, there is industry that directly benefits from that.
Then
Okay.
you're
The fa-
arguing for the corruption that you want to get rid of.
I'm not arguing for the corruption. I'm arguing
I
for
want
the
all
reinvestment
the good,
into the
I want
United
all
States.
the good things with none of the bad. The bad comes with the good, so I'm sorry.
I don't think so. I think that we can create a United States where a Union Pacific executive cannot pay off the government to hire a fake contractor that overcharges for their work. And I think that we can also create a United States where the government is willing to take an initial massive loss on the construction of an interstate system that in the long run benefits American system.
That you don't like, though. That's what I'm saying.
But that's not corruption.
It is.
That's not
It is
somebody paying off.
corruption. It's corruption. But you
It
just don't
is
think it
not.
because you don't think the inefficiency is bad, but it is corruption.
How is it corruption? It's corruption because it's inefficient,
Yes.
but government's
that is-
inefficient. So government
yes,
is fundamentally
yes,
corrupt.
Yes. Yes.
No,
100
no,
million
that
trillion,
is a
quadrillion,
very dumb
billion
idea.
percent. Yes.
That is a very dumb idea.
No, it isn't. That is what
The
government
definition of government is not corruption.
is. It is. It is.
Corruption is an activity that can be taken on by
That
government.
is what the government
But-
is. Government is corruption. It is a gun. It is a gun pointed at your head saying, "Give me money so I can do shit with it." That is what government is.
Well, that's not corruption. That's extortion. But we're getting outside of ourselves here.
The line
Corruption.
between corruption and extortion is so thin. To me, there is.
I would. Okay, well, I think that your line is fucking retarded, and you need to rethink it. I think that the purpose of government is to
The purpose
collect
of government
funds
is violence.
and
That is it. That is the only purpose of government.
a function of government is
No,
violence.
that is
The purpose
that
of
is
government.
The purpose of government. It is violence. That is it. There's
Yep.
nothing else.
Let's
government
think
does.
about government in a very traditional
Government
sense. You
is
have two men in a
violence
wood.
at gunpoint.
Nope. You have
Yes.
two men in the middle of the woods, and they want to build a house. So one man has to cut down trees, one man has to build the frames, and they both have to work together to put up that house. Now you expand that community to 20 men. Now you need something to coordinate people. You need something to unify them. You need something.
Themselves?
Traditionally, they could, but once you start to approach actual nations, entire nations, that doesn't happen.
Maybe the
People
problem-
can't
maybe
just.
the problem is that we are trying to coordinate people at these massive scales, and we can't because people are really shitty at coordinating above maybe 200 people at most. And I would argue the military does it right, where you should only be in charge of 3 people at a time, ever.
I would argue that people are fine at coordinating above 200 people. It just
no.
takes a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is fucking government. Government that uses funds in a discretional manner that benefits the unit as a whole. Government that makes sure that Jim doesn't kill Bob and rape his
You
mom.
sound like every fascist who's ever existed. I'm not saying that to strawman you, but that's literally what like fascists say, like unironically.
I'm glad you think that. I would say that almost all ideologies out there say that government exists
And they're all
at some
terrible.
level to coordinate.
They are all terrible, and we shouldn't allow any of them to have power. Ideally-
Fantastic.
Ideally, we would live in anarchy. Now, that's never gonna happen.
Ideally, we would be fucking Somalia, and look at where
Yes.
they are.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I would argue that that is a piss poor take on the world, and that you're kind of fucking shameful for that. But
Oh no. Oh no, I'm so ashamed.
I think that there is a certain degree of freedom that should exist in society, but I also think that there is a place for a body which coordinates, which takes funds to utilize for the betterment of society.
Always be small. It should never be big. Anything that tries to be big will fail inevitably and will lead to people being oppressed in the long run. We shouldn't allow that.
I think there is a place for small things and there's a place for big things. There is a place for small local government, for small local matters. There is a place for state government, primarily more or less for criminal stuff, to say, hey, you can't kill Bob. And then there is a place for an overarching federal government.
That's what I'm saying. We don't need a massive government to say
Right.
we're bad.
I'm not arguing that we need a massive government. I'm arguing that there is still a place. No, I'm arguing that there still is a place for a government that does spend and does reinvest into its people in ways that private entities don't want to. You say private entities, let's innovate. And then you get fucking Elon Musk saying, let's shove a bunch of people into a vacuum chamber that can't fucking exist on a fault line that will destroy it.
They agreed to it. Nobody is forced. Elon Musk is not holding a gun to people's head to do it. The U.S. government does that all the time. The U.S. government is way more sick and disgusting than any private corporation has ever been, ever.
That's not my argument. My argument is that Elon Musk will try to make a vacuum tube. Elon Musk will try to create a vacuum tube, and the government will create a road that I actually use, that industry actually uses, that actually functions. Okay, that's fantastic, but nobody else is doing it in a more efficient way. That's fantastic. I would say that that is fundamentally necessary to an extent. I should get other people to. Society should exist in a manner wherein a road is created that everybody can utilize. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a house. I'm saying
it only benefits you. That's corruption.
No.
Like unironically,
that is not corruption. You're calling it corruption because it demonizes what I'm saying, but it's not actually corruption. It is literally the real
corporations. That's the question. Do they vote for a new CEO of Amazon? No. Do they control what these corporations do? No.
Hold on. You don't have to do business with Amazon though. I've quit Amazon and I haven't bought a fucking goddamn thing from them in a year. They can go fuck themselves. If you want.
But don't you think you can control the government though, and who you vote in your local elections for like whatever infrastructure you want, or like?
Hold on. You can, but other people have just as much of a right to do it as you do. With Amazon, I don't have to buy from them if I don't want to. I don't give a fuck. If you want to be tortured and oppressed by Amazon, feel free. Go ahead. I don't care. I don't buy from Amazon. That's fine.
Okay, what about like internet services like Google or mainstream like social media?
He's a libertarian, which means that he thinks that they should be able to do anything they want to him.
No,
and
hold on.
As long as he reserves the right to say, I'm not going to use Google, that doesn't count.
Because people freak out when the government like lightly infringes on your rights on the online realm, but when private companies do it, libertarians just turn their heads. Like I don't understand it. Because they do it more than the government.
That's the thing. Like, I don't use it. I don't care. If you want to be.
So it's not an issue.
That's fine.
It's not an issue because he's not using it. But roads are the massive cancer with modern society because, god damn it, I have to pay a 3% income tax that goes to building a new curb.
Okay, so in Oregon, for example, the 3% they collect for road taxes, they don't even use it on the goddamn fucking roads. They use it.
So I would argue
hold on,
that.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You have no idea how mad I am because you said, oh, you only have to pay 3% for roads. They don't even spend the goddamn money on the goddamn roads. They spend the goddamn money on fucking trains that nobody uses. Nobody uses the goddamn trains. If that isn't corruption, okay. I don't know what the fuck is.
And I think that okay, that's an issue, and that you as a voter should vote. So then they use that money on the roads. No, I'm advocating. I am saying that government should.
Of what it is, God fucking damn it, you're fucking retarded.
What the hell has happened here?
First of all, can we rewind here? Earlier, you were saying that the people get what they vote for, and technically, you're voting for the system.
I completely agree.
And technically, you're voting for the system.
I am changing these stupid motherfuckers. So, if I could, I would kill everyone and be left the fuck alone. Fuck off.
So, Libertarian Delta Sword thinks that
would be a
Libertarian
fucking
Delta
mass
Sword
murderer.
thinks that people deserve what they vote for, but at the same
Yes!
time, when the government does something he doesn't like, it's terrible and the worst thing ever,
Because
and
I
he
don't
doesn't
like
have
it,
the
and I
actual
hate that I am
faculty
fucking
to
changing
go
this
out and
bullshit.
vote against
If
it.
I didn't have to
Gotcha.
pay, if I didn't have to pay
Okay.
the goddamn road tax,
So the lesson we're
goddamn
getting
okay
here.
with it. If I didn't have to pay for it, and I had to pay for the goddamn private road, I would be fine with it. But I have to pay for the goddamn public road that doesn't even get funded by the public taxpayers.
So Delta doesn't have the willpower to go out and vote against this.
I
Instead,
vote
he
against
sits
these
here
motherfuckers
and screams
every
against
single
people.
time!
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Oh my god.
So
And I
he
tried-
thinks
you
he
have no
wants the
idea.
road, but they
You
build the
have no
railroad. So
have no
he wants the
idea.
road, but they build the railroad. So instead of doing something about it, he just sits here and
Oh,
screams about it
oh,
instead of
because-
voting for the
because I'm not-
politician
because
that
I'm
will
not
build the
entering
road.
politics.
I
Oh,
gotcha.
great fucking plan. Great fucking plan.
Uh huh. Yep.
That is the most-
This is incredible.
That is the most fucking retarded argument I've ever heard. Oh, because you're not actually doing something about it, you can't have an opinion on it. Shut the fuck up. If I
I'm
didn't
not saying you can't have an opinion on it. I'm critiquing your lack of inaction and your lack of adherence to your own stated
Pilot,
ideology.
How the fuck do you know that I haven't done
stop
anything
being
about
ridiculous.
it? That I haven't lobbied about it? That I haven't done all this shit? That I haven't tried talking to people? How do you know? How the fuck do you know?
Oh boy. Wait. Hang tight for just
God,
a
you're
second.
a little mad.
You're
Bro.
such a fucking retard.
I'm getting a little mad, bro.
Delta Ward, please calm down.
You came in?
No, because I have to pay for the goddamn roads.
I had
Oh,
the
no.
audacity to suggest that government should maybe consider paying for large-scale infrastructure, and Delta is a little upset with that.
How dare you?
Just a little upset about that.
No.
Yeah, honestly, fuck our infrastructure. We should let it fall.
Yes,
Like,
we should. And then
great.
people would
Yeah.
figure out a way to make it good.
We
yeah.
should let
Delta Sword
Elon
thinks that we
Musk-
should be Somalia. Somalia
Yes!
is a shining bastion of the
Yeah.
world,
Unironically,
which is
yes.
evident by its fantastic state of affairs.
Yes.
It's full of ex-Soviet weapons. There's not a single domestic arm producer, but warfare is their #1 export. Okay,
we
that's
should
one
just
thing.
we should just give Daddy Musk
like terrorism.
all the government money.
Yeah,
and,
then
like,
that
have
way
Daddy
Daddy Musk can
save
talk
everything.
more
Well,
about his
no,
Hyperloop,
no, I don't
his
believe that.
huge
Exactly.
man.
Daddy
How did
Musk
this go
Exactly.
from
money,
talking
but if I wanna
about
pay-
video games to
but-
politics?
But hold on, if I want to listen, if the warlord across from my house is having a too loud of a party
Oh,
for his
no.
child bride, and I shoot a tow missile at his face, that's
His child
mine.
bride.
Except
Yes,
that
yes.
tow missile, that house, none of that
What
would
a-
exist
Speak
in
about
fucking
what a-
Somalia
what a-
because
what
it's
a
great
fucking
libertarian.
Well, like, it
Wait,
was
wait,
since
hold
my
on, hold on.
fifth.
You don't
This
think
is
they
this
have
is
tow
the
missiles in
best.
Somalia?
This is the
Oh,
best
dude, I have some-
libertarian.
No,
I have
these
some-
No.
This is the best
I'm
libertarian.
saying that they
take
don't
of
have
all time.
domestically produced tow missiles. Those tow missiles only exist
Bro, I
because
don't-
of the
I
systems
don't
built
want the
within the
mili-
United States.
I don't want the government to pay for my road because I want the ability to shoot the warlord across the street from
Ariel,
me when he's
you're
having
literally
when he's having
Tesla
a
fanboy.
party
I'm
that's
sorry,
too
your opinion
loud.
doesn't matter.
That's too loud
Tesla family, bro.
Exactly.
over
Delta
his.
Sword
over
breaks
his
I don't
the
marriage-
want modern
over his marriage with
society,
his
and I
child
have the
bride.
right to murder people if I
That's really
choose to.
cringe.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
fantastic.
I'm
No.
an ultimate arbiter.
Trumpet
You only
man,
have
you
the
are
right if
truly
they break the
libertarian.
NAP.
This man's a real libertarian.
Extremely
Guys. Holy
cringe.
shit.
Extreme cringe.
Listen, I'm willing to
Well,
die
by that logic,
I'm willing to die by that sword.
Yeah,
Give me a
Delta, you
goddamn
ready
tow
for the
missile
boog, bro?
because
You ready for the boog?
because the
but that tow
warlord-
missile would not exist if the infrastructure funded by the United States government was not there. So
it-
at the
buy
end of the
it
day,
cheap Iranian
you
copy.
fundamentally need government for that tow missile to exist, even if you're in the middle of
True.
So
bumfuck
you don't
Nigeria.
think- wait, hold on. You don't think private arms manufacturers made weapons
No.
anymore before the government
No.
bought them?
No.
I'm saying private arms manufacturers wouldn't be to the place where they are without the government.
Oh yeah.
Case in point,
Without the
fucking
railroad.
I
Somalia,
would
which
argue
is
they would make
full.
They would-
Fucking
who-
Somalia, which is
who-
full of
who
Soviet
funded-
weapons, not domestic armed producers.
Who funded the nuclear weapons program? I wonder.
Private entities.
Who's funded like all advanced weapon projects? I
the
wonder.
U.S. government, and they're all fucking terrible.
Russia.
I wonder.
Oh
why.
yeah, they're so
Yes,
terrible.
are
That's
heads.
why
They're
they've
so
worked for the
terrible.
last 70 fucking years.
That's why they're the
great.
best
we
in the
live,
world.
We live, hold on, great. We live under a nuclear umbrella that can vaporize us at
Base?
any point. G
Base.
fucking G, guys.
It
Good job.
will not
Unironically
vaporize us though
based.
because because
sounds kind
the
of base.
nuclear umbrella works. You fucking dumbass.
It sounds
Good
kind
job.
of
You advocated. Oh, if I get nuked, at least it was the government that fucking funded me.
True, exactly.
Well, I won't get
You're right.
nuked because the systems are in place to prevent that, thanks to the
Exactly.
funding of the government.
True. No, but see
Yeah,
what's
the
more
Chinese
base,
aren't
right?
gonna kill us
It's
yet,
like, it's crazy how no just private companies, suddenly come up with like a brand new weapons technology without government funding. It's kind of crazy.
Because private people tend not to fucking shoot each other for random
No,
reasons.
because private people, when they have an idea for a weapon, they don't want to sink like $10 billion of their own money, so they go to the government
I
and they
think
say, "Hey,
Somalia
government,"
is
they say-
full of
they say-
private
they say-
people
they
shooting
say-
each other.
They say, "Hey, government." They say,
The border
"Hey,
is full
government,"
of
right?
stuff.
They say, "Hey,
people shooting each other.
They say, "Hey, government, I have a really good idea for like a fucking super weapon. Can I get $10 billion to develop it?" And the government says, "Fuck yeah!" And then they give them $10
You know why?
billion.
Because the government engages in war. Oh, fucking
Because the government's
great.
based. The government's
So
based.
does fucking Somalia.
Yeah.
So your assertion that
private citizens engage in war when like a government isn't there to do it.
Yeah, the cartels do it all the time.
And the government is better at it because there's like a structured system there's a structured system to end these like conflicts peacefully, whereas in private conflicts there aren't.
So wait, what I'm hearing here is that without government, there's needless bloodshed, but with government, you have to pay for a road that you don't want, but the byproduct is that you don't get fucking shot going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Literally, in my case, the government doesn't even pay for the roads that I pay for, so...
And that's why they're trying to do a spending
Oh,
bill.
pity be. You don't have to pay for the fucking roads, and you don't get shot going to the grocery store.
Wait,
I think that's a fantastic trade-off.
Bottle or something? Like, what the fuck happened?
Hold on,
Like,
pilot,
what's
hold on. I do pay for the roads, but I don't because the roads are shit because they spend it all on goddamn light rail. That's what I'm trying to say.
Light rail?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. They
Who's
spend it on
spending
an
money on
infrastructure
light rail?
that improves your life, and they probably spend a little bit on that public university you're going to.
Let's do it
and a
like
little bit
Rome.
more
They
on-
built good roads and then they went to war. Boom. Brilliant
Fantastic.
idea.
What war have we gone
Conversation
to
ended.
anytime
But
recently?
pilot, nobody uses the light rail. That's what I'm
China.
arguing. Nobody
Wait,
uses
but there's shit tons of stuff that uses light rail. What?
Yeah,
You know how much
like what-
you know how much domestic transportation is done
No.
on light rail?
No,
Delta
light rails
believes
for
that
passengers.
domestic
Light
Delta
rails for
believes that
passengers.
because it's
Heavy
government,
rails,
it doesn't work.
regular
It
locomotives.
only
No,
works
I don't
if it
believe-
is.
I don't believe that
No,
because
it only
Wait,
works.
okay,
It only
sorry,
benefits
what
society
state-
if it's
what state-
private.
What state are we talking about? What
So-
state is
Oregon.
investing
Oregon.
heavily in light
I'm
rail?
talking about Oregon. In Oregon.
Oregon?
Oregon.
In Oregon.
Gone.
In Oregon
Gone.
specifically.
Stop
Gone.
that. Stop that.
Stop being a faggot. So in Oregon specifically, in Portland, I don't live in Portland anymore. But when I lived in Portland, they have it's called the MAX. I forget what the acronym is. It's a light rail system and it goes all around the city. They did a study like 5 years ago at light rail usage across the city. At peak hours, at rush hour traffic hours, the light rail was like 50% at capacity. And in order to break even, you had to have like 80 to 90% capacity all day. And so for most of the day, the light rail was under capacity, and then like at peak hours, it was approaching capacity, but it didn't get there. It was a fucking waste, and the money would have been better spent elsewhere, but people...
And vote those politicians out of office. Newsflash, buddy. Commercial entities fail sometimes too.
Delta, what I'm hearing is you haven't made life hell enough for drivers yet.
Wait, so the Portland like transit system, is that what you're talking about? Okay, so that's not really investing a lot in light rail.
They spent
This
like
is-
50% of the road funds every year for 10 years building this light rail system that nobody uses.
How much is that?
I
do
don't
you
know
think?
exactly. I read about it years ago. It was billions of dollars. It was like
It-
five
it
or 6 billion.
wasn't.
It was. It was like
No.
$5 or $6 billion.
No.
Yeah, it's like two
Google it.
destroyers,
It was
man.
about 52,000 euros.
Yeah.
So like there's a 7.8 mile like line extension planned in
give a
the
fuck
Portland.
about
Hold
where
on, can I
you
can I finish, small child? Thank you. So there's an 8 mile line extension planned in the Portland metro area, right? And it's estimated to cost $200 million. There was a
I'm talking about the
back
whole
in like
goddamn system.
I know.
Not
Back in
a
like
7-mile stretch.
I understand, child. Calm down.
Fuck
So
off,
back
bitch.
in 2010, there was like a 7 mile rail system from like Portland to Milwaukee that was like built, and that in the end costed 1.5 billion. Half of that came from the half of that came from half of that came from the federal government, and the other half came from like local
That
governments.
doesn't make it
So
any better.
even then,
So
it's not really costing you that much.
people
So
who,
this,
hold on. So people
yeah.
who don't even live in Portland had to pay for it. Wow. People who
Yes,
have
that's how
zero
state.
benefit from it.
That's how state work. Yeah, that's how state investment works.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, if I live in one part of a state and a state like invests in another part of the state, like, yeah, that benefits the whole state. Maybe
No,
not
it
me.
doesn't.
Like,
It does not.
It doesn't benefit me directly, but it benefits me indirectly.
How so? Someone goes to work and it turns a widget?
Better business. Yeah. Better business in that part of the state, right?
That is
So
possible,
number one,
but I don't think...
I'm not even done. I don't know like what you're saying it's possible for. Like, obviously, increasing the living conditions benefits that part of the state, and by that part of the state getting better, it thereby increases the rest of the state to some extent, whether that be through tax money, whether that be through money going towards education, whether that be more like just throughput of money through the state.
Yes.
So like over years that'll like spread to other communities. Like there's numerous amount of benefits.
Okay, so maybe marginally we can measure some improvement in economics because someone can go to work and turn a widget and do XYZ. My question is it literally worth the billions of dollars in inefficiency related to it, of building and maintenance and all that bullshit, to increase a little bit of, just a little bit? We can't even probably measure it because of how small it is, how marginal it is in the economy.
I mean, in large cities without decent public transit, movement in those cities gets really bad. So I could understand perfectly like the justification for Portland spending billions of dollars on their like rail system
to get people out of cars.
But
yes, like New York City. New York City is a great example of this, right? If New York City didn't have its subway and bus system, it would be like fucking collapsing, right? It'd be unable to support its population.
Okay, so do you know why mass transit works in New York City versus Portland?
I mean, New York City is pretty dense.
It is the most dense
something demand.
But
it is the most dense. Hold on. It is.
But you're missing a key part of it.
No. That the density is what makes mass transit work.
But you're missing a part of it.
What?
So there's large portions of the city which are very low density, and still the bus and the transit system go there.
Yes, but
they still work.
Well, I'll bet you anything they only use exclusively buses in those parts of the city, whereas in Portland, for example, they use light rail everywhere, even in.
I'm pretty sure the New York subway goes across like the entire city. Like it's
so the subway goes like everywhere.
Yes, but okay, I don't know exactly what part you're talking about, but I'd be willing
the
to
entire
bet money,
city.
I would be willing to bet money that the lowest dense part of New York City still probably has, if not an equal amount of density, a higher density than the most dense part of Portland.
Let's look it up.
Because Portland is not a very dense city. Portland is goddamn fucking elongated as fuck. Like, it literally takes a long fucking time to drive across it, where New York City is very dense. And it's really, like, it's on that small island. It's compact, where Portland, it goes everywhere. Like, literally, it takes me, when I go to my parents' house, it takes me, like, 45 minutes to drive through the city.
Good point.
Let's see.
So that's the thing. Mass transit works in highly dense areas. That's why in China, for example, where they have, like, almost, in a lot of cities where they have almost exclusively rail transit everywhere, or Japan, it works because they have such high density. Whereas in America, most places, there are only a couple places like New York City, LA, San Francisco, where those things actually work, and they don't work anywhere else because of the low density. And Portland is not a very dense city.
I mean, do you know how, like, in New York, for example, like, there are so many, like, I'm from Manhattan, right? Like, there are so many routes to take, and how much billions of dollars they spent on their subway system, to where it's like, I mean, it took over a century and a half to build, quite frankly. Like, it took such a long fucking time. And, like, There's a reason for that because people need to go everywhere, and like it's hard to like kind of structure a way like that, especially on an island like that, to where it's like cost effective. Like when you see shit come out of China, I mean, it's just like one area, man. Like they think it's so fucking good. I mean, they got lucky with their areas, but like I mean,
I'm not disagreeing
it's all different.
in that regard. I'm just saying you can't compare Portland and New York City because the densities are so much different.
Yeah.
Isn't like 10 or 11 million people live in just on like in one, like in Manhattan alone or something?
No, it's a lot less than that.
Oh.
The total New York City population is 8.1 million, spread over all 5 boroughs. So the most dense parts of the city are obviously Manhattan and just like southern Bronx. And so again, obviously there's lots of train shit there, but also there's a fairly decent like spread out population in Brooklyn and Queens, and there's lots of rail in Brooklyn and Queens.
Well, okay.
So like most of Brooklyn and Queens is somewhere between 20,000 people per square mile and like 60,000 square people per mile.
Yeah.
In Portland, their downtown area is about as dense as like New York City's downtown areas, over 100,000 people per square mile.
Yeah, I don't
yeah, it drops off relatively decently to like, again, between 20 and 40,000 people per square mile, like outside of the city center. So it's comparable to Brooklyn and Queens.
Here's the only other thing I would argue though, that in that is for the New York transit system, it probably brings in more than enough revenue in that regard that it can afford to pay for those less dense regions to get those things. Whereas in Oregon, for example, this has been a problem ever since the light rail was started here. They've always had trouble getting people to ride it because people don't want to ride it because Portland is not dense enough, to the point where they've had to make these road problems because they're not spending money on the roads and they're spending on the light rail to encourage people to do it. But people still, to this day, like I said, it's like at rush hour traffic, it's like maybe 50 or 60, or it might be getting close to whatever the break-even capacity is, but it never reaches it.
That's what
Yeah, so
you have to remember that not everybody can just have a car, go around, use a bike, electric or whatever. That they need it.
He's arguing that because some people don't. They'll magically find the funds to, instead of investing in a vehicle, invest in a multi-billion-dollar train system.
Public transit not only helps low-income communities, but it helps all communities because you can go from one place to another. If you don't want to use a car, or you find it more convenient to do so, you can just use it. Or for tourists who don't want to buy a car, that has a large impact on tourism. And okay, but that's important in some cities. Like, not you might be thinking of just some of the major cities, but that's just it's a big impact.
Yeah, so the MTA does actually not make profit most years. There's a few years where it has.
I said profit, I said revenue. There's a difference.
Yeah, it on average loses like $4 to $6 billion a year, and it costs a total of $16 billion to operate.
Okay.
So it's like not. It would need to make, what would that be, 50% more?
Listen, I'm not arguing for the MTA and against light rail. I think both are terrible. I just think that it's better. You can better justify the MTA in New York City considering the circumstances versus Portland, which are very different. And as someone, I used to live in Portland, and I don't live there anymore for a variety of reasons, including I don't want to pay the goddamn road tax, although the state funds it too, which pisses me off, but that's different. So anyways.
I just don't see too big of an issue. They also do like road work, so.
Well, they don't though. That's the problem. Like
so
I ride a motorcycle, and I swear I almost die almost every single time I go riding because because one thing they do that really makes me mad is they use tar snakes. Do you know the tar snakes what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They use as a cheap fix to repair the road because it seals the road from the cracks and all that, and it prevents the cracks from getting worse quicker and stuff. The thing is, when you're on a bike, especially if it's wet, it gets really dicey, and like you slip and slide on those things. And it's like, if you're gonna fix the road, why not do it right? And they don't, because one, they're lazy, and most people are lazy. I wouldn't doubt that a private road would do that too, but to some degree. But two, it's also cheaper because they're spending all the money on the light rail, and they're like, well, we need to fix the road still, and so they do that. So, like, I'm mad for a variety of reasons. I'm not just mad that, oh, some poor guy gets to ride light rail to go to work. That's great, whatever. But I think they're, like,
I mean, Portland is gonna end up spending over $1 billion. They're like gonna spend over
Light
$1 billion
rail, mass
on
transit.
fixing a section of I-5, or like a what is like a quarter-mile section of I-5, which has like large issues and it needs to be fixed.
yeah, believe me, I know. Like, there's been a section of I-5 that goes to Washington that they've been planning on rebuilding for years. But one problem is they don't want to rebuild it because Washington doesn't want light rail in Washington, but Portland or Oregon will only agree to pay for half the funds or whatever if light rail is in the deal, and so they never do any work because of that.
Wait, but they originally like allocated more than enough money to pay for it, but then the cost expanded because there was more issues than they thought.
Well, also, like I said, because Washington doesn't want the light rail, but Oregon does. So
Washington has
Oregon was willing to pay all of the cost. Like Washington passed in a bill.
Seattle has light rail.
Oregon, the state, right? Like the state Senate passed like enough funding for it. But then the costs increased beyond what they thought originally.
The way governments do contracting is they sell it to the lowest, basically the cheapest alternative. They say who will do it for the lowest.
Believe me, I know. I was in the military. I know how this works.
Yeah, so of course they get unrealistically low, like bids. And then they just jump the cost to it. It actually needs to be later on, so the budget's always full.
I understand. Believe me, I know how this works. Believe me, one thing you guys don't understand is that I've worked in government so long and I've seen all the bullshit from the inside that, like, you explain this to me is not, like, I know how it works. And that's one of the reasons why I hate it.
Yeah, I just think government's inefficient in general. It's just how large bureaucratic organizations are.
Yeah, duh, no shit.
Yeah, but like an entirely privatized system would also be extremely inefficient.
I don't think so, because if it was
I think so.
It wouldn't be. It wouldn't.
And it would die, and the society would collapse, and everyone would die.
No, it wouldn't be less efficient, but it would definitely need regulation to prevent like serious abuse.
Well, yeah, that's what happened, right? You would have massive abuse. It would lead to like singular individuals becoming basically like warlords with almost infinite power. Eventually, these warlords would, have nukes and shit. One of them would fucking be retarded.
Regulation.
Well, I mean,
but if government don't exist, then you can't have government regulation.
So what we approach then is a pseudo government absent a commitment to the people. Is what I'm hearing here.
This was tried like originally, after the Revolutionary War. We had a really weak federal government, which had almost no power. Had no power to do anything, and it fucking failed, and they needed to replace it.
Here's one thing. I don't disagree that there is a purpose to government. I just don't think it should always, in every single case, be the first thing that we try to do. And we do try to use government as the thing that fixes everything first and foremost, rather than try to figure it out. And here's the thing, I'm a very libertarian person, but I don't not think that people, if they want something at a local level, that they can't have their government do it for them. I just would rather it be done at the local level rather than, like I said way earlier, probably before you came in. The problem we have right now is that Texas and California are fighting over what funds go to
Wyoming.
Yeah. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think we should be doing that. Like, Wyoming should be figuring out that shit, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Okay. I mean, I don't really care whether or not they're fighting.
One thing, I would be less upset with the light rail fiasco if the state of Oregon wasn't funding it and if it was Portland funding it, because I don't live in Portland anymore, and I don't give a fuck if they want to have a light rail system. The problem is that Portland, because of how large it is, it basically controls state politics, and then they get to vote themselves all this money from all the other places around Oregon, and I don't think that's fair, because they don't vote for stuff that improves my area. They just vote for stuff that improves them. And yeah, maybe it, through some, not, like, butterfly effect, it does.
More people should vote.
What?
More people should vote.
Oh, believe me. Listen, like I was, when I was screaming earlier, upset, my problem is that I'm chained to all of the other retards who vote, and that's what annoys me the most.
Yeah,
If I
so
didn't have to
push more people in your area to vote.
Oh, believe me, I do. You don't think I do? I talk to people all the time
You
about
should
like
get more
all the
people to
bullshit.
help you.
Charge stand ready.
Believe me.
You should start lobbying.
I actually have lobbied at the state capitol. A couple of years ago, I went and lobbied for a bunch of veteran issues. So I have done it.
Such a corrupt individual.
Well, but the thing
I don't know
is,
why I would associate with you.
well, I mean, the funny thing is, if you remember our conversation earlier, I didn't think that was a bad thing. You're the one saying that's a bad thing. So
Yeah.
I'm being very consistent with my principles, and I don't know.
I would argue you are not, but we've been here. But I would argue that you're not. You argued that the electorate or the body of citizens who elect officials should live with the consequences of their decisions.
Yes.
But you're over here proposing that we remove all of this public infrastructure, we take all these laws off the books, yada, 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 very violently, I might add, so then you can shoot a Somali warlord with a tow missile, if I recall correctly. So your entire idea here is...
It's like 1 out of 5 people in Oregon don't vote. So if you can get those like 1 out of 5 people to vote for you, you would easily not even all of them, right? Just a fraction of them.
Believe me, I tried talking to them, but they always say, "Well, my vote won't matter." I'm like, "Well, your vote won't."
And then you say, "Yeah, but like, do you have anything to lose by doing it?"
Well,
and do you have something to
gain? A more
gain?
powerful argument is because you think your vote doesn't matter. Your vote—it's a self-fulfilling.
I mean
prophecy.
that too.
Your vote literally doesn't matter. Because you make your vote not matter, your vote doesn't matter. And I've actually convinced some people to vote, although it really is hard because a lot of people in Oregon we have the great, awesome. We've had mail-in balloting for years. Don't do it; it's fucking terrible. I think it makes things worse. But like, it's super easy to vote in Oregon. So the fact that 1 in 5 don't vote is
it's a lot better than other states which don't have mail-in voting, and they have like 1 out of every 2 people don't vote.
Like, it's really hard to convince those people to vote because in Oregon it's already easy to vote as it is. Like, the only way we can make it easier is if like there was an automated text message that popped up on everyone's phone so they got to vote there. Although I think that has lots of problems and I'm not advocating for that, but that's a different story.
Collection fraud, dude. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, listen, just not to get on another subject, but you know how they're like, oh, we need mail-in voting. Don't do it. I would argue mail-in voting is the reason why Oregon is shitty to begin with, so.
What causes it to be shitty?
So most people when they vote, they're single-issue voters, and then if they vote on anything else, they just vote on, they're literally doing they'll just read what it says in the box, and then they'll just click, they'll hit yes or no based on how they feel. They don't think about it deeply. They don't do in-depth research or anything. Like, so.
No way.
So, yeah, well, I didn't think anyone would argue against that. So recently, where I live in Corvallis, Oregon. We had a ballot initiative to change the Corvallis, the city constitution or whatever, to get rid of all gendered pronouns. And I read into it, and like, there's a lot of gendered pronouns in the Constitution, and you'd think, oh, that's an easy vote. But I want to make sure that if I'm voting no on it, which I did, I want to make sure that it was just for the reason why I thought it was, not just because gender pronouns are bad. You know, I want to make sure it didn't change the laws or anything. So, if that makes sense. So like, I'm like autistic enough that I do like the in-depth research to make sure that shit doesn't go ham when I vote on it. But most people aren't like that. Most people aren't like me. So.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be reading about the
We'd have too many rational thinkers, bro. It'd be bad.
Yeah. But I mean,
too many people would actually agree with Ben Shapiro and think that just you can move away, sell your house when the floods come.
Yeah, just move.
Just move, bro.
Well, I think I understand I understand why like that's dumb, but at the same time, like if there is a natural disaster impending, you're not gonna just sit in your house and die.
No shit, they're gonna wait until like their house is underwater and then they're gonna run.
Well, yeah.
Because they're gonna get evacuated and then they're gonna have to be living in like fucking, shelters and Like, yeah, and then fucking
know,
you have
but
to remake
think
housing for all these
I
people.
think that's what Ben Shapiro is saying, is that most people aren't stupid enough to literally just drown in their house, although there are some people who would, so.
I mean, if they choose to drown in their house, that's kind of just natural selection.
Well, but again, I'm libertarian to the point where I'm like, let it happen. If they want to drown, go, it's their fucking right.
I wonder how insurance would deal with that, if it would be covered.
Alright, how about this? Would you support government/state funding for like anything which threatens public health?
I'm gonna cut you off right here. I'm in support of, if most people want to do it, they should do it and live with
Okay, but what if it's not something that threatens most people, but it can threaten some people? So like let's take like the Florida building collapse that happened recently, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why that building collapsed was because there was large like concrete structural damage, which hadn't been repaired, and the building knew about it for 3 years, but wasn't ever able to fix it because they didn't have enough money to do it.
Sure.
Because it was a co-op building, right? And eventually, like a month before it collapsed, they started trying to get a loan together, and then it collapsed.
Yeah.
So the reason why it didn't get fixed for 3 years was because money. Would you be in support of like the local or state or federal government having some kind of like government program so that they could give money to those types of buildings, even if they don't, or like a government subsidized loan or something like that, right? Such that those like these buildings would have an immediate way to solve their issues, and it wouldn't end up with like 100+ people dead.
Well,
or
I mean,
more.
You're assuming that they would instantly spend the money and it would instantly fix it, and I don't think that would happen.
I mean, there can definitely be like legal requirements put into the contract.
Here's the thing, like,
so
like there are people suing that building owner for collapsing the building. I hope those people win, and that company.
Why? Why would they win? It's not a company; it's a co-op. Like the people who lived in the building were the people running the building.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So
then they fucking.
Are you gonna sue the survivors?
Then they,
Wait, but why? Why?
Because if they knew there were problems and they didn't try to fix it,
But they did try to fix it. They tried for 3 years to fix it. They couldn't get any money to fix it. That's what I'm telling you. They tried for 3 years to get money, and they couldn't get any money. No one would give them any money.
Okay, so if you know there's a problem, like.
Wait, so the people that were living there wouldn't give them? They wouldn't put in their own.
No. So the people that live there, the people that live there didn't have enough money to fix it on their own, right? They didn't have. It was going to cost like something like a few $1 million to fix, right? Yeah. The people living in these condos, even like combined, they didn't have the money to do it, and they tried to like because they bought a house there because they had like the job there and the family there.
Wait, I'm not too familiar with how co-ops work, but so how does the money get to construct the building in the first place?
So a building, so some construction company makes the building, right? Someone rich pays for the building to be made, and they own the entire building, and they sell all of the individual units to like people, and those people buy the house, and they join the co-op.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
So then all of the building owners or the individual apartment owners become part building owners, and thus like when all the units are sold, they all own the building, and the person who owned or who made the building walks away with a decent profit, and they go on to make another building.
I feel like just how you need auto insurance to drive a car, there should be some sort of insurance that you have to pay for.
So
for this
I have a degree. I have a degree in econ. I have a degree in econ, and there's a very famous econ thought experiment, which is, would there be more or less auto accidents if you didn't require people to have auto insurance?
I think it'd be the same.
Well, I mean, practically yes, but a lot of economists would say no, because the thought process, and I don't agree with this because of how it works, but the thought process goes if people had to pay for the damages directly rather than have their insurance pay for it, they would drive safer. Now, obviously, practically speaking, that isn't going to happen, but you see what I mean? Like, if people have to recoup the actual costs of what their problems they cause, they would be more careful.
Yeah, but so my question still is, so like the people buying into this condo, right? They obviously didn't know about the concrete damage when they were buying their house. It wasn't until after they had bought, they had an inspection. Like there's a thing in Florida, after a building becomes 40 years old, it has to go through this inspection cycle.
Yeah.
and that's where they found these damages, right? So the estimate was like multiple millions of dollars, and the building owners didn't have a way to pay for that immediately, right? All of the residents didn't have enough free money combined to pay for it. So they started looking for outside help, right? Going to outside investors, going to banks, right? They tried multiple different ways of getting money, and they couldn't get anyone. And like finally, a month before it collapsed, they started negotiations with a bank who was willing to like sit down with them and give them a loan, and then it collapsed. So they spent 3 years trying to get that loan, and like couldn't do it in time.
So my question is, why didn't they do this inspection before they bought the building? Why'd they only do it after? Or did they buy the building?
Because this is a local regulation where 40. So this is not just like I walk around and I look here, look there. This is a very this is a very detailed inspection that the local municipality pays for, because it's tens of thousands of dollars at least to pay for this dude to come out and do all this work.
So I ride a motorcycle, as I mentioned earlier, and when I go buy a motorcycle, and I'm a little different because I have the skills necessary to do this. When I buy a motorcycle, I go and look at it and make sure it meets all these criteria that I want. And other people, if they want to buy a motorcycle, they bring me along to look at it.
Buying a motorcycle and buying a house are very different. So when you're buying a house, right, you do have an inspector come in and check out the place, right? This is common. So an inspector will go through, right, make sure all the appliances are working, make sure the electrical works, make sure everything that he can see without ripping the walls out and stuff is up to code and all that, right? But you might still buy a house, and then once you start ripping the walls out, realize all of the wiring in the house is 50 years old, and it all needs to be replaced within 5 years. And there's no way for your inspector to know that. And suggesting that your inspector, you're never going to find someone who's selling a house who will be willing to let you rip out their walls for your inspector to see what the status of the wiring in the house is. You're never going to be able to get that.
One, I don't think that is necessary.
It
agree.
is.
No, well, hold on. I don't agree. I agree that people won't let you rip out the walls, but I disagree that you have to rip out the walls to tell foundational issues with a house, unless it's something like. So in the house I live in right now, we have it's so old that it has lead paint, and I rent this house, and so my landlord said, hey, there's a disclosure I signed when I came in the house. There was a disclosure when I came in the house that said, hey, there's lead paint, don't eat the lead paint, you'll be okay, whatever. The owner only found that out because they did an inspection, but they figured that out. I would say for most issues, you can do an inspection without ripping out the walls. With that one specifically.
So for general things, yes, but for very specific things, no. So I'll give you a personal example from my life, right? We bought a house a few years back, and our inspector, who's a very trustworthy guy, and he's we've known him for a long time, he's good at his job. He went through the entire house, didn't find anything wrong, and he was very thorough, and he even poked and prodded in a few areas which most homeowners wouldn't be cool with, but he still did it, and he still found no issues. And then we started renovating the place and stuff, and we realized that there was multiple issues. So number one, it had old wiring in parts of the building, not the entire building. So certain parts of the second floor had the original wiring from the house back in the 50s, so that all needed to be replaced. It turned out that the foundation was slowly moving, sinking, which is not obvious from the outside unless you literally get a microscope and you start detecting these micro cracks in the fucking foundation, which we had to do because we noticed these weird shifting noises, which again your inspector's not going to find if he's only in there for 10 minutes, but when you live there for a year and you hear these creaking noises every now and then, that gets your attention. So we had to spend $50,000 for this company to come into our basement and dig half of it up and run these poles down 60 feet until they found solid bedrock for them to anchor the So basically, long story short, there's lots of shit that can be wrong with the house that you're not going to know of until you own the house. There's no way for an inspector to find it unless you're paying $200,000 for the inspector and have the homeowners consent to touch every single part of that house.
Here's my question to you. So when you bought this house, did you have, maybe you didn't know about those specific problems because there's always going to be uncertainty. Did you have an idea that, or did you did you and whoever you live with have an idea that, like, hey, if there's problems, we need to have a plan in place to help fund repairs for these problems, or maybe we just move houses or whatever? Did you have that, or did you just go in and it happened? You're like, you're
So
spending 50
so
grand now.
generally speaking, when you own a house, you always have like some kind of fund because there's always going when you own a house, there's always going to be stuff that like breaks or whatever there's going to be like upkeep that you need. Were we expecting to need to sink another like $75,000 into the property within like 2 years of owning it? No. Did we have $75,000 like sitting aside in case that happened? No, because again, the report came back when we had our and inspector go through that he didn't find anything like that, nothing major that would require any kind of issue or any kind of repair, serious repair. So we were not expecting to have to spend that money or anything near that much.
I feel like large unexpected costs like this should be covered by some sort of home insurance.
And it's not.
Yeah, I think that's where the issue lies.
But this is what I'm saying. I'm saying there's not. House insurance is not for like if you find things that are wrong with your house. House insurance is like if your house burns down.
Yeah, I feel like that's like, especially if it's something critical that has to do with like structural integrity or something like that.
And that's what I'm
There
saying.
should definitely be some sort of like safety net in place.
There probably isn't something and you just don't have it. Because you can buy insurance.
I highly no.
You literally
because
can.
like if you buy an apartment or like you're living in like a condo or apartment structure, everyone has to pay like on top of rent, like there's a maintenance cost and probably like an HOA fee too, and that should be going towards paying for like some sort of insurance like that. And the fact
Well,
that
it's not like car insurance, so where like they can see all the problems with the car before you buy it.
Well, the thing with car insurance is that if you get into an accident, your insurance covers that. And it should.
No, I'm saying like let's say you buy a used car, right? And like you'll know whether the transmission's off or something is weird with the car, like because it's easy to check that stuff. It's not like with the house, like Ariel said, you need to fucking go with like a little microscope to see the little cracks in the foundation. Like you can't really do that with houses.
No,
but with cars, it's easier.
The initial issue is that these people in the building that collapsed, for example.
We're going down a different rabbit hole than I wanted to. My point My point is that you had some sort of plan. I'm sure what I'm saying is if the house was literally falling apart, I don't think you either would move in there whether you knew it or not, or you had some sort of backup plan that it would have solved the problem without leading to your death, even if it was a life or death issue.
Okay, so the issue is once you know about it, right? Once you know about that issue, you legally are not allowed to just not tell anyone when they go and buy the house. So you're like legally required to tell them about any issues you know. So if we just like once we found these issues, if we tried to sell the house, it would sell for like a fraction of what we paid for it because the next person would have to sink in all that money, and they would know that they would have to sink in all that money versus we didn't. So it's not viable to just be like, oh, we'll just sell it and like move on, because you just took a fucking huge loss.
Well, I mean,
and that doesn't make any financial sense.
Well, sure, and I mean, this is the thing about life is that life has risk. Life
there are
life sometimes sucks.
Yeah. So okay, but that's not it's not a great argument though.
I don't disagree. It would be really great if there was a magic sky fairy that fixed all the housing problems.
I'm not saying there should be, but I am saying there should be some kind of safety net. Like if you are unable to get money in order to fix like a serious safety issue with your structure or your house, I think at a minimum that should be something which is like a social safety net.
Sure, that's really warm and fuzzy, and we should all do that. But the problem is that with government is that one thing with government is that, as I said earlier, government it really is only good at one thing, and that is being exceptionally violent and preventing and doing things like that, enacting violence to...
It doesn't necessarily have to be from the government. It just has to be a law that says that a bank has to give you like a low rate.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be public. Yeah, you can have what he was saying, just have a guaranteed low APR like home improvement loan, basically.
The second part of what I was going to say is everyone wants to use that gun to benefit them, and the thing is when you use the government to benefit you in maybe a way that is rational and reasonable, everyone wants to do it for them, and then the problem is that with government it's a small snowball at first, but it turns into a giant boulder snowball that gets out of hand really quickly, and I think that should be the absolute last resort that we should try to resort to if it really is that big of a problem. And I'm not saying we can't do that. Like, I am meaning when I say that we should, like, unironically, we should have, like, the tow missile situation I was talking about earlier. I do believe there is a proper role to government. The problem is that my problem is everyone uses government as the first and foremost way to solve the problem instead of trying to figure out a way to solve it themselves or solve it locally.
Solving it locally is just another government. It's just on a smaller scale.
Not necessarily. Like, I mean, like, for example, so I don't know, like, and maybe those people with the building that fell apart in Florida, maybe I don't know anything about the story, but they could have tried fundraising, and maybe they did, and it sounds like from what you're saying they tried or whatever, and maybe they were literally going to the government as, like, the last resort, but, like,
well, there's no option to go to the government. They had to go to private institutions, and all of them turned them down.
I understand, but what I'm saying is that it's not just with this Florida building issue. It's with a lot of things. It usually is first and foremost the government. We need to figure out how to get the government to do it. Like with pilots, earlier example of the railroads or the roads, we had, and roads existed in the United States before the government got involved with the National Highway Act. It's just we've expanded it because we wanted to give greater access to places that didn't have good access before. Which
it's because it's a public utility, so it should be publicly owned.
I understand that. That's not what I'm not arguing against that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the problem is that when you argue something good for you, everyone will say that, and then all the bad stuff that the government does, like I said, so like you guys were talking about how cool the weapons research is and like how that's necessary for defending the nation. Maybe it is, but some of the stuff isn't, and we don't need that stuff. And so we should, like I was saying, we should be very careful about what we try to get the government to do, because the government is only really good at doing one thing, and that is being exceptionally violent.
I disagree.
Well, I mean, that literally is why government exists. Government is literally to be violent, to make sure that people don't kill each other.
I would say that's an aspect of government.
I would say that is the.
But most of that is done on the local level. Like,
sure,
almost all enforcement of law and peace is done locally,
sure,
and it's not done on a grand scale.
For now, I would argue it's become more federalized over the years, and I would argue it's only going to get more federalized as time goes on.
What's federalized about my local police force?
Not much right now, but it is getting more and more federalized
like
as
what?
time goes on. Just national databases that don't need to exist and things like that.
Define not needing to exist.
So.
Like, how do you quantify that?
So why? Okay, so why do crimes that I committed in one state need to matter in another state? Why do they need to know that?
Excuse-moi, monsieur.
I know that seems really silly, but, like, here's the thing. Like, states, I think the states unto themselves should be in charge. I don't know what I'm saying, actually. I just realized. I'm getting really tired, by the way.
It's been 4 hours.
I took, like, 2 of these Tylenol, like, pain relief with, like, that are, like, sleepy, and, like, I just realized I'm getting really tired.
Tomorrow we can get back to chaos.
And I've been running in a circle for like an hour, as we've been talking about this. Like literally,
Nice.
like on my screen, I've literally been running in a circle.
I just went to the shower and everything exploded.
Nice.
That sounds really sketch.
Okay, there we go. Apparently my mic's been disconnected for the last like half hour.
Nice.
Yep.
Good job.
Delta has been
I try
outed as a
my hardest.
libertarian.
Oh, No, believe me, I know that I'm kind of a libertarian.
I think anarchist is a
I'm
better
actually
number.
not anarchist. I actually despise anarchists.
No, you just believe that government should be destroyed and an ideal society is absent government.
Listen, I have my idealism, but I know it's never gonna work.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing. Here's my ultimate like philosophy. The problem with government is that humans are incapable of ruling themselves, which is why we create government. But because humans are incapable of ruling themselves, they create a government to rule them, which is created by humans. So it's just a never-ending loop of like offense. And that's my issue with government. That's why when I was screaming earlier, I'm like, I'm just chained to these idiots. I want to be left alone. Free.
There's a portion of what is it, Sudan and Egypt you could try and take over.
Yeah, let's get a.
You can't take over and mess up that easily. Do not be silly.
Capitalist paradise, you know? No laws.
You know what? I'm calling Elkin about this.
I do believe there is a proper use of government. I just think we need to be more careful than we are now.
Yo,
We
Elon
just
Musk
need to
is worth
expand
more
the
than
government.
Pakistan. No,
We need to
at
expand
least
the
their
government.
GDP.
What does the government do now that it doesn't do?
So the government needs to like stop wasting nuclear material on like nuclear reactors and shit, and it needs to start like mass research and development into space colonization and space mining. It needs to like put up fixed price contracts for space mining research, so there's no like retarded fucking what's called price overruns and stuff. Like you get a fixed amount of money and that's it. Which has worked really well for NASA's
Just give me all the
shit.
plutonium. I'll eat it.
And then yeah, we need to prioritize our nuclear material for space research and exploration because it's kind of limited, and the only thing that works really well in space is nuclear reactors.
Nuclear. Excuse me.
After you get a little ways away from this, so
Oh yeah, true. If you're far away.
if you're close to the sun, it works. But
Okay.
Is Wineggs Drop just trying to talk?
Ariel.
Because I haven't like.
Yeah, what's up?
Yes. Oh, you had me really low for some reason. Wow. Okay.
It does sound like there's constant rain in your
Nuclear
background.
Space?
Yeah.
Oh, I need some noise canceling.
Anyways.
It doesn't work on desktop.
No, you're good. You're good.
Nuclear in space is a really bad idea.
Why?
Without including SpaceX, I think like 3% of space launches just explode or crash or suffer a major.
It's less than that.
Issue.
Then how are we gonna generate power in space?
Yeah.
We're
It's
very
actually
good
pretty-
at sending stuff to space.
Yeah, so by and large, like the average, the average rocket launch is like 99.9 something % reliable. There's very few failures.
I mean, I would rather have a nuclear reactor leak in space than on Earth.
The main concern with putting large amounts of nuclear material in space is a rocket blows up like when it's going fast in the high atmosphere, and it spreads like 1,000
Lots of
kilograms
fallout.
of like plutonium into high orbit and irradiates half the planet.
Then you have like a glorified
we
salted
live in
bomb.
Fallout
Fails
Yeah.
6% of the time.
That's way less than
It just-
6%.
It says something about satellites. Space vehicles.
That might be like failing within orbit, but not necessarily on launch. So there's not that concern within the atmosphere.
Yeah. So like something, if some satellite in low Earth orbit has plutonium on board and it like re-enters, it's going to contaminate some section of the planet, but it's not going to be too extreme. It's going to be kind of localized. Versus if a rocket going to orbit blows up, it's going to spread that plutonium across like half the planet.
First of all, is plutonium even like in frequent use with reactors?
Yes.
Really? I
was
thought
under the impression it was normally
For nuclear
Thorium?
for space vehicles, it's the primary use because it's a lot more energy dense than uranium, and you can have like solid state nuclear reactors on these things, so you don't need so you don't need complex fucking like steam generating nuclear reactors in space.
that makes sense.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Well, then at that point,
I
then you're
know
not
they're less
even.
efficient, but they're way more reliable.
Gotcha. So then
that's
at
why
that point, you're not even looking at that large of a mass, then, would you?
For large scale shit, you need.
Well, for like
Run
even
a civilization or something, you'd need more than to just run a instrument in space.
There are
well,
plans
you're right.
to-
For just like a standard instrument, like isn't the critical mass of plutonium like substantially less than uranium? It's been a while since I've looked into this, but
yes.
yeah, so it wouldn't really be that much that you're even dealing with in the case of an accident.
Well, you'd be sending up a lot of RTGs.
I think they are planning on sending up like more traditional nuclear reactors.
Yeah, but that's going to be like for installation on the moon or on Mars, like on a gravity environment where running a liquid cooled reactor is a bit easier.
But I feel like the same thing still applies, where if that blows up on the rocket up, you're kind of screwed.
Yes.
The worst case event.
Which is why it'd be better if we could mine it in space and then bring it to the planet required.
Yeah, true.
I think mining in space is not gonna be really realistically feasible.
Well, it's going to be necessary if they want to have any sort of scale.
It's necessary at some point.
The scales, like the scales, are not gonna be good. We need like 50 years for it at least. That's my prediction.
I don't think anyone's arguing it's going to happen tomorrow.
Maybe if they, make like some sort of space elevator, it'd be cheap enough to bring materials to Earth. But even
That's
still,
50 years
Of
away.
course.
Well, okay, bringing the material back to Earth doesn't make much sense.
I mean, bringing it like stuff up to space industry.
Also, the fact that an
so you don't have to
asteroid.
launch it.
I think it makes sense to gather and refine those resources, like in space and construct in space, rather than bringing it down to Earth and doing the same thing only to send it back up.
No, I meant
Ariel, I'd like
if you
to
have
say
a space
something.
elevator, you can mine on Earth and send it up to space without having to launch, hundreds of tons of raw materials.
Yes, but a space elevator is not going to happen anytime soon because it requires like carbon fucking what's it called?
It'd probably require some
fiber?
sort of
Hey, real quick,
graphene-based composite.
Nanotubes?
Nanotubes, that's the word I was thinking
I
of,
have a
yeah.
question that isn't related to this at all. So there's a natural disaster. You want a generator. You go to the store, and there's only one generator left on the shelf, and you need the generator to run your refrigerator.
Why do I not have solar?
Hold on. This is hypothetical.
Because you hate Elon Musk.
Yes.
True.
Well, I hate Elon Musk, but for different reasons.
That's cringe.
But so you go to the generator store, and there's one generator left, and it's like, let's say just like $2,000 for this generator, whereas normally for the normal price it's like $500 or whatever. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think that's normal.
Good or bad in terms of what?
Bad.
Is it good that the price has increased?
I think
Bad,
it's just
that's
normal
illegal.
if there's a
For that
supply
individual,
shortage,
no.
the price is going to go up.
So here's another question. If the price remained the same and someone bought that generator to do some other bullshit with it that wasn't as essential as keeping your insulin good to go in your refrigerator, is it good that the price remained the same that it increased? Because
Well, it's the responsibility of the individual with the insulin to make sure that their insulin stays cool. So
The implication there is that
It isn't your fault somebody else bought it.
I
Just
know,
really
I
quick,
know
the
what you're going with
implication
this
that the,
about like the whole price gouging laws, especially during like natural disasters. But
Yeah, the question is implying but not stating that the person who used it for like a random purpose would not buy it if it was also at $2,000. So I disagree with that like unspoken premise.
I'm like getting into it like a drunk stupid with how tired I am, so I'm sorry if I worded the question wrong. But
No, it's fine. I think the underlying premise is that the person, like, any retard can have money, right? I mean, Trump got into office, so, anyone can make it. That was a joke. Anyway, so, people with large amounts of money can do really dumb shit and be able to afford it. So just because, like, you raise the price doesn't stop people from, like, buying their generator so they can, like, continue jerking off to hentai instead of, like, helping a hospital stay operating.
Sure. No, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is that like, price is a good control for market demand, which is what a lot of econ people think. Although modern monetary theory doesn't think that, and well, there's all bullshit with that.
But anyway, why do you not like our Lord and Savior Musk?
He's just, I think
he's a jackass.
Is he too based?
Oh boy, you're gonna piss off the guy with the SpaceX profile picture?
No, he is cringe.
Danny Musk is too based.
I don't think he's as smart as people think he is, and on top of that, I think he also.
Yes, he isn't smart.
Well, he is smart because I think he got the government to pay for a lot of his businesses through like.
Not really.
Yeah, really.
They've gotten really little money from the government.
It's not just about like direct money. It's like laws and stuff that benefited them. He's got a lot.
The laws have been against them, like
he's gotten a lot
their entire existence.
I would argue he's gotten a lot of protectionism from the government to grow his business, and electric cars wouldn't.
Yes.
Like what?
And the general public.
Like what?
There were a lot of tax credits and stuff for owning electric cars that it didn't go directly to Elon Musk, but because they existed, people bought electric cars.
Yeah, but that's just
sure.
To me that just looks like an entrepreneur using it. Yeah, like they've been used by the big three or some other automakers anyway.
I think the government was just trying to have a push towards electric vehicles anyways. So.
But that's the thing. I don't think that's right. I don't think the government should push the market to do one thing.
But why does that make Elon bad for like taking advantage of the like you should blame the government then?
No, well, I do blame the government, but I mean.
So then why do you put it on him? Isn't that just like good capitalism?
I just don't like his face.
It's following the incentives for sure.
No, I mean.
Yeah,
listen,
just like taking advantage of the political and.
Listen, like I said, he's smart for taking advantage of what was there, and you're absolutely right. The other ones would have taken advantage just as much as he did. So.
Except they didn't.
Well, yeah. Well, I would argue
they were slower to adopt. I'd say they're trying to get on it now, but yeah, at first.
And like tried to kill his company.
Yeah, I know, but I don't like that the government is doing that to begin with. And yes, it is. I also don't like the government doing that. Believe me, I don't. Just because I don't like Elon Musk doesn't mean I love the government. Like I hate the government.
I don't see why you'd be upset with an entrepreneur like taking advantage of a economic incentive that the government is like willingly giving him and like.
Because I don't think the government is a legitimate actor in the market.
So because you don't think the government is a legitimate actor, therefore you should, as a businessman, reject all of the government's like benefits that it gives you. Yeah. That doesn't make much sense.
Well, it doesn't make much sense practically, but I'm talking about from a principle perspective. I understand I'm being highly idealistic. Like, don't think that I'm not being idealistic.
Yeah,
I guess I kind of see where. I can kind of see where Delta's coming from with that. Like,
you guys think that like I'm a libertarian and that I don't understand I'm being idealistic. I understand I'm being idealistic, but that doesn't change that fact. You know what I'm saying?
Well, also I would say that you should I actually think you should be fine with him doing it, considering the amount the government's spending in like EV subsidies is far less than the amount that it spends in like the coal, natural gas, fossil fuel industry, subsidizing oil.
I don't think they should have.
I agree, right? But if you were like an entrepreneur, and you see that all of your competition is already getting subsidies, and the government like starts offering one that would benefit you and not them, would you still not take it?
No, I mean yes, from a practical perspective, yes.
Okay. So practically, you would have done what he did.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Fuck it.
Okay.
But idealistically, no. And that's why I idealistically hate Elon Musk.
I think it's kind of critical or hypocritical then.
Why?
If you'd agree, you would do the same thing in his position.
Why?
Because you're saying that you dislike him for doing something you would also do.
Yeah. Because he didn't.
So you would dislike yourself if you did it?
Motherfucker. Why didn't he?
If you were in it,
why didn't he let me do it? I don't know.
Would you not like yourself if you did it?
Please. Ariel, please.
What?
He just doesn't like him because people think he's smart for doing things that he didn't do himself.
True.
He's just saying that he took advantage of things at the correct time and did it well.
But when he's not a hypocrite, it's not okay.
He's just salty that he's not Daddy Musk.
Yeah,
It's okay.
I am salty.
It's okay.
I am mad.
It's okay to be jealous of Daddy.
I
Musk.
am jealous, motherfucker.
Yeah,
The Lord
where's
and
my
Savior.
$100 billion?
Yeah, speaking about
Sorry,
Elon
300
Musk,
billion.
300.
Yeah,
Yeah.
300.
does anyone else think
Wait,
Elon Musk
what?
is looking a
What
bit
happened
raggedy
this
now?
week?
Does anyone else think Elon Musk is looking a bit like a bit raggedy, like he's worn out?
I mean, he's doing too much, bro.
I know.
He's got to
It's
be
helping
selling
out.
Hyperloop.
He's
He
saving
has
the
to
world,
be selling. He has to be selling giant vacuum bombs to fucking
Yep.
municipalities.
Bombs on a fault line because that works out well.
I hope he sees his Mars plan come to
Actually does.
fruition before he dies.
I hate the Hyperloop and I hate the neural net just because I don't want to be
Yes.
to a computer and fuck the Hyperloop because it's on rails and fuck rails.
I don't think the computer wants to.
Well,
be
fuck
connected
you.
to
I like
you know?
rails, but I don't like reinventing the train.
Wait, Hyperloop doesn't have rails though, doesn't it? I thought you just.
No,
It
it
does.
doesn't.
It's a
It's just
It's
a
a
Tesla.
train. The idea is that
Hyperloop
it's a
doesn't exist
train.
at the moment.
Right.
Like-
The
I thought you
idea,
Also,
the
Elon's not
hypothetical.
Well, Elon's not even working on Hyperloop.
Good.
I think
He still
SpaceX
did
is a
try
really
and
big-
sell it.
No, he wrote a white paper, and then said, "Hey, if you want to work on this, here you go. Here's our like napkin math." That's like the most he contributed. Oh, okay. And then also SpaceX runs a competition, so different universities can go and like make a small prototype little vehicle and put it
Bro,
in.
that was the most
vacuum
embarrassing
chamber, run it. Yeah, but it's not trying to like fucking create Hyperloop, right? It's inspiring like young engineers to take like a hard challenge and work on it to the best of their ability. It's nothing to do with like creating Hyperloop. Like why does any kind of private company sponsor these types of competitions? It's to engage young engineering minds.
Or just to spend all the money that they have.
Yeah,
probably
but
get some
Elon's
pretty sick
not
tax
sitting there
rebates.
thinking that like some random college student is going to solve like all of Hyperloop's issues and they're going to bring some fucking pod to the competition that's like boom, let's
No,
start
you
making
just
tomorrow.
import a bunch of Chinese minds and send them to Harvard, dude. So
Like,
that
they're
they
not
can go
doing
back
that.
to China and develop that shit for China, you know?
Now there's other like Hyperloop companies that took the white paper and like ran with it, made lots of concept art, yada yada yada. That's like Virgin Hyperloop, One Loop, etc. But they have no relation to Musk.
Just fuck Elon Musk because he's popular.
And then
hipster. Fuck him.
Loop is based. So even though Thunderfoot has a massive rage boner right now.
Last mag.
Haven't seen one of his videos in a hot second.
He's made like 5 in the past week over the Boring Company's Loop project in Vegas because
They're
they
still
got
doing
approval.
that.
No, yeah, they got approval to expand it.
That's
massively.
frightening. I do not like that.
Why?
Because it's stupid. It's for
How's it
like
done?
trendy people in their Teslas to get into a fucking glorified subway.
I hate Tesla drivers.
Yeah, but
They're
it
so
works.
fucking smug.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. It worked for the. it
But
worked
it's
for the
not
convention
efficient
center.
is the thing.
Why is it not efficient?
Because it's not space efficient compared to like metro systems that we have already in the world. It's just
Wait, but it costs like way less, and it still transports more
think-
than the amount of people they want.
but it
I think
only
the
transports
technology
Teslas.
is- I think
Are we
I think
yeah, we're
by
talking
choice.
about
is the fact that they can build these tunnel systems for far cheaper than a traditional subway. But the idea that it only works with like if you have a Tesla is kind of silly.
I mean, theoretically, it would work with any EV, but
But the way they're being designed right now and the system they're
It
building
would work with
only
any
works for
EV.
Teslas.
any EV that fits.
I mean, it's designed for Teslas, yeah, but like any EV would theoretically work.
I just hate
It's it,
EVs. I hate them.
but yeah, like also the runner-up proposals to the Vegas group like cost way more and would transport less people. So, can you really blame them for going with like the best option? Like if I gave you 2 options, right? I either give you like a shitty bus system that transports half the amount of people and costs 50% more, or you get like an expansion of Musk's like loop ship, which already has demonstrated its capabilities and has already lived up to all the promises they made like 2 years ago when they started making it. Which one would you pick?
Where?
The one at the convention center. The loop that already exists. I'll show you a map. It's like...
Yo, can I just say that I think
really
Tesla's a
fun
myth.
I gotta go.
See ya.
Alright, good night.